Sometimes I make 10 grand in a day, selling like 3 keys in an hour. I'm hearing about ways of impregnating. That is the future of trafficking. I start to realise that I'm under surveillance. I get arrested. There was a sawed-off shotgun in the back of the van. They then had to arrest all of the people involved. We were responsible for bringing in at least 80 kilos, but they know it was a lot more, but they just can't prove it.
Pieter Tritton is a career drug smuggler who spent decades importing high-quality South American into the United Kingdom. He came up with ingenious smuggling techniques and was one of the first British drug traffickers to figure out how to melt pure into furniture and pass it through customs. In the mid-2000s, Pieter was arrested in Ecuador and sentenced to 10 years in the most brutal supermax prisons in all of South America, where he witnessed horrifying violence that most soldiers never see in an official war. He himself was almost killed numerous times in prison riots and gang beefs, but he survived and was repatriated back to Britain, where he has finally put the drugs down and picked up the pen. Check out his best-selling book, El Infierno, My Time Inside Ecuador's Toughest Prisons. And for more bonus content, head over to patreon.com/theconnectshow. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the all-time greats, Pieter Tritton, right here on The Connect with Johnny Mitchell.
The gangs were so powerful, they ran everything in there. In the first week we were in there was like over 30 murders. You just did not know whether you were going to survive that day. Violence came out of nowhere sometimes. Hand grenades would come through the window sometimes and explode. I saw people get killed in there, hacked to death, blown up by hand grenades, shot, poisoned, electrocuted, drowned, every which way you can think of.
That's when I see lights behind me start to flash. And I didn't even think, I just hit it. I was driving like my life depended on it. And then I parked the car, hopped out, closed the door, and I started running.
And he pulls out a burner, a shank, it's like 6 inches. And then he passes it to me. And he goes, here, that's yours. Don't ever leave the cell block without this. He was the reason I made it out of that place alive.
Pieter Tritton. Pieter Tritton.
That's a terrible English accent, I must say.
Pieter Tritton. Pieter Tritton.
Pieter Tritton.
Oh, is it Tritton?
No, it's not.
Bastard. Do you think there is more drug use in the United Kingdom than in America?
I think it's of a comparable level.
Because obviously America is the biggest buyer of drugs, but we're a huge country of 350 million people. I think per capita...
I think statistically, Britain is, within Europe, is the biggest consumer of certainly of cocaine. Spain is pretty close behind it, but Britain, I think, is pretty well up there.
What is it? Is it the weather combined with the trauma that everybody seems to have, right? And you know what I mean? All of this is just a scandalous land.
I think people in Britain, right from the hippie era, my hometown, Stroud, was a synonymous hippie type town. So it's always had a reputation for heavy drug use. And there's a few towns around Britain, like at Glastonbury, but they have the big festival, Totnes, all these little hippie enclaves.
Sure.
And I think people in Britain have just always liked to experiment and use drugs or alcohol or whatever.
Yeah, I think also it's an intellectual culture still. So I think smart people are a little more depressed and like to relieve themselves of the burden of life and the existential crisis that is us on this earth. Yeah, definitely. I think they like to relieve it with drugs.
Escapism. It's escapism, isn't it? And yeah, for sure.
Wow. Is there still a cocaine boom going on now in Europe?
There's a massive cocaine boom in Europe.
But what's the difference between now and like 20 years ago?
Sorry, is that thing?
What's the difference? I mean, because it seems like there's been a boom on since the 90s.
I think that, the war on drugs was just a fallacy. It didn't work. It's only made it worse. And I think even though the chemicals have become harder to get in South America, they've just found other chemicals they can use in place. And there's more cocaine being produced than ever. It's being shipped more widely to more countries than ever before. And there's just so much corruption and there's so much money involved that it's ending up all over the place.
So what's so interesting is there is not that much money in selling coke in America anymore. The cartels hardly bother with it. I mean, it's there, of course. It's still the most used drug besides marijuana.
Right.
But all the money is in fentanyl. It's in
meth,
crystal meth. It's in these synthetics
Is that because people use more of them?
No, it's because they can control. It's
Price.
cheaper to make, right? So cocaine, you still have all these inputs, right? From the leaves to paying the farmers to paying the people to make the base.
Yeah,
and all the middlemen.
They're manufacturing the fentanyl and the meth themselves.
Right, exactly. And the price, you can only get so much for coke. Like the price of a kilo of coke in America, it's pretty cheap.
What is it in Los Angeles? Like about 15?
I would say like if you're buying it straight from the, somebody who just brought it over from Tijuana, probably no more than like 20, 25.
Oh, is it that much? Because it used to be about 15.
Yeah,
in Los Angeles.
I think it might have gone up a little bit since but they massively overproduced since the pandemic. They massively produced cocaine, and so it bottomed out the price a little bit. I think it's going up now. But what is in your time, the 20 years you were in the game, did you see the price in Britain come down?
I mean, I can give you an example now. Obviously, I still know people who are, involved.
Right, you yourself are still smuggling in cocaine.
No, I am not still involved.
I'm just joking.
And whoever
We're
put that
having
out,
some fun.
Whoever put that out on TikTok on that ex-crime or whatever from Dodge Woodhall, I will find you.
Yeah,
and I will be coming through your front door. I'm telling you now.
Yeah, to paint it, because that's what he does.
Yeah, to paint it. That's right, red with blood. Your blood. But no, I am not involved in no. But I obviously I still know people who obviously
you got ears.
I have
you
friends.
Hear things.
Yeah,
right.
you have friends that are still.
So, but in your time in the game, did you see?
I was just going to say that how the price has fluctuated. Yeah. I'll give you an example right now. It was around about the £30,000 mark. Within the space of about 2 weeks, it dropped by nearly 10,000. So it fluctuates quite.
It depends on if the big load gets in or not.
Apparently, yeah. So apparently a huge amount of cocaine has just come into Holland. And now that's filtering out across Europe.
Right. That's
the word on the street.
Yeah. Wow. So, but it does seem like Britain is like an open market. Like there's really,
to some extent.
Like if you're a group or even an individual, right, like yourself, and you have the proper connections, you can get product through. In America, it's kind of been monopolized. There is micro trafficking still from Colombia, but 90% of it is controlled by the Mexican cartels.
I mean, people have attempted that here as well. I mean, the Albanians, for one, have certainly monopolized quite a large part of the market, the cocaine market in Britain.
Right.
They can be found in almost every town and city in Britain, to in one shape, form, or another.
Right.
But there is definitely still families, small groups operating.
But you yourself, just one guy from a hippie town, operated much like an Albanian clan that's got connections at ports in Ecuador, all the way to people that they're paying off in Belgium to get the shit through. What's so fascinating about this is that you kind of on a smaller level put all that together.
Yeah. I mean, we never paid off the police. We had the opportunity to, but because of the method that we were using, the impregnation method, impregnating it into rubber, latex.
You gave it to pregnant women to swallow.
Yeah, no. I could tell you a horrific story, but I'm not going to about a pregnant woman. Yeah, no.
Okay,
you don't want to know.
So basically, you're from this. You're not from. You're not. Would you call yourself working class?
Yeah, definitely. My father was a builder. There was never a great deal of money at home.
Right. So, but you're not from the council estates. You're from the countryside.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're pretty young though. You got into the game.
I was very young when I got into it.
Yeah. It's wild. You were like,
I mean, my dad was smoking hash, so when I was growing up, but you don't really appreciate what's going on when you're very young.
Right.
Started to get a realization of what was happening around the age of about 10 or 11. By the age of 12, around about then, I was smoking hash or experimenting with it, with school friends. And that then quickly led into dealing to friends. I realized that it was quite easy to make money. I had a couple of stepbrothers. My parents divorced. My mum's new partner had a couple of sons. They were both involved in the illegal rave scene. And I saw it as a way of making money very easily because you could go to these illegal raves and there was no control by the police, and there was no, you could do whatever you wanted really inside these parties. And it was very easy to sell drugs there.
And this is the early 90s rave explosion.
Yeah, very late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, so the rave scene, especially in your part of England, southwest England, was huge.
Yeah, massive. There were a lot of it, what they called new age travelers, hippies, I suppose.
Yeah.
Really. And there were, every weekend, there were like 4 or 5 day long parties going on.
And so you're selling to hippies, so there's no violence involved. So you're thinking this is a good business. A 5'1",
I'm not 5'1". You might be 6'10", but I'm 5'10". That's 6.
But you know what I mean? Like you're like, oh, this isn't a big scary business like they show in the movies.
Yeah. But I mean, I did have those stepbrothers as backup, and to some extent.
Right.
And they, one of them was quite a bit older, and they were all involved with the local heavy mob. And so
I see.
I always sort of had people around me that I could fall back on if I needed it.
Sure. You get popped when you're 17, when you're in what we call high school.
Yeah.
And you're a good student, by the way, which is no surprise. You're a sharp guy.
Yeah.
What did you want to do? Like, did you have dreams?
Well, because, obviously, I mean, everyone has dreams when you're a kid and you're growing up. My dad was a builder, so initially I thought about becoming an architect, but there wasn't really much money in it. I've always loved archaeology, which is what I ended up studying at university. But I would have been a good doctor. I should have done medicine, but just didn't have the financial backing. It's a 6-year course in Britain,
right? And
just didn't have the financial backing to do 6 years at university. Unfortunately, I went into pharmaceutical.
Sure, you became a pharmacist instead, right? Yeah. So you took a pinch at 17. Some couple ounces of hash.
Yeah, it was. It was fairly minor.
And when you're you are a minor at 17 still. Do you get like probation?
Yeah, I got sentenced. I think it was 6 months probation and a small fine.
And does that follow you into adulthood?
Oh, yeah, that was goes on your criminal record.
Okay, it does. Yeah, it does. So you can't get that sealed because you were underage.
No, I don't think so. It may have been. I think there's things at that level. I think there is a point at which it expires.
Okay.
So that's probably. It will still be on my record for sure. I mean, my record runs to ages.
But I mean, like, does that when you later on in life when you started getting, in big trouble, can they use that early charge to like hit you with a more prison time?
Yeah, I could bring it up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, but that kind of scared you straight for a few years at least.
Well, I mean, it stopped me whilst I was doing my A levels, which is high school.
High school.
Yeah. So it stopped me dead in my tracks. I was like, I don't want to jeopardize going to university.
Right.
Which is college in America. Yeah. So, I just stopped dealing, stopped going to the parties, stopped taking drugs, just got my head down. Because they expelled me from the college, but they said I could sit my A levels.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They threw me out.
Okay. But you did make it to university.
Yeah. So I got 4 A levels, or what was it? An A, 2 Bs, and a D, something like that.
Yeah. So you had good marks.
Yeah. So I got 4 offers from 4 different universities, different areas around the country: Liverpool, Southampton, Bradford, and Cardiff.
And where'd you end up going?
Cardiff, because it was close to home. My mum had a heavy drinking problem by this point. It was having psychotic episodes, and it was all really, really stressful. And I had a younger sister who was 4 years younger than me, so I was kind of leaving her behind to deal with all that on her own.
Yeah,
and I kind of didn't want to do that. It was quite worrying. My mum had sort of half separated from her partner and was kind of living in a flat on her own, and it wasn't good. So I wanted to be on call,
right?
Shall we say? So Cardiff to where I was living was like
So you almost had a chance
by train.
You almost had a chance. You were out of the game for a sec. You were being a good son, but it's pretty quick that you got back into it, just from an opportunity. Yeah.
So I mean, I've always been entrepreneurial, even as a kid. I remember coming up with business ideas, and it's just a streak in me. I suppose.
Well, you attract that. Like I notice people used to ask me, how do you meet these criminal connections, right? Like when it's an underground business, you can't advertise, you can't put out an ad on Craigslist or in the newspaper.
Even though some people do.
Yeah, they do now. They do it put it on Snapchat now.
Yeah.
But back in the game, how do buyers meet sellers in this invisible world?
Yeah.
And I would tell people the best way I can explain it is you attract it. It's, swear to God, it is. You mentioned telepathy before we started the show.
Yeah.
Like how you think about someone and then you end up meeting them or they call you.
Yeah.
That's how you would attract what you think about.
Yeah, definitely.
It's metaphysics.
Yeah, positive thinking and telepathy. All
Right. And negative thinking too. If you're thinking, you know, you can attract the negative people into your life.
Yeah.
But, and I myself am the best example of that because I had no criminal connections and I still were able to meet these people that put me in positions to make huge money in the game. So that seemed to happen to you.
It happened really quickly, actually. I maybe I have a trustworthy face. I don't know, but I'm not stupid. I'm reasonably intelligent, and I found it very easy for people just to introduce me. I mean, that was kind of one of my rules, that I wouldn't really work with anyone unless I was introduced to them by someone that knew them and trusted them. And I very quickly rose up the chain, went up the chain to, of suppliers, from the level of buying half an ounce of cocaine to suddenly being introduced to people that were selling kilos, and then to people that were selling tens of kilos, to people that were importing tons.
Right. And this was in college still.
Yeah. And from initially buying that half an ounce of cocaine for a fellow student, within, I'd say, probably 3 months, I'm dealing kilos.
Wow. Who are you picking up kilos from?
Basically, the local dealer back in my hometown who shared my name. Oddly
Pieter Tritton?
No, not
your father?
Not the surname, not the surname, the first name. So we'd be Pete and repeat. Those are little tags.
Cute.
But yeah, that was very nice.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm joking.
So he kind of got cold feet when I started ringing him up saying, look, I need like half a kilo or a kilo. Because a lot of it was on credit.
Yeah.
So
you didn't have the buy money for a full...
it was starting to get to that point.
Yeah.
But he said, look, I don't want to be involved. It's too much risk, but I will introduce you to the person that I'm getting it from. He's happy to meet you. So, like I said, within sort of 3 months of buying that first half an ounce, because obviously I very quickly started meeting local dealers around Cardiff. And it was then that the larger amounts came into play, because the local dealers were supplying the whole of Cardiff. And I already knew some fairly big dealers back in my hometown and other areas through the illegal rave scene. So I had quite a large dealer base already, and it just got bigger by meeting these local guys around Cardiff. And I then just had this brainwave, and I said to them, will the people that you were previously being supplied by be open to having a meeting with me, because I think I might be able to supply them in turn. So I then met the people that were supplying the dealers in Cardiff, who were like the main dealers throughout the whole of South Wales, up in the Rhondda Valleys, Swansea, Bridgend, all the way down, across South Wales, which is where the bulk of the cities are. And so, before I know it, I'm talking to people that are asking me for 2-3 kilos of coke. Yeah. 50 to 100 kilos of hash, and then it goes up to 250 and then a 500.
Right.
It just...
So who was your supplier then? Because now you have the best price, so you can now...
Yeah, because
you can now supply these distributors.
Exactly. I didn't realize that the guy I was introduced to by the guy in my hometown, so he introduces me to the main dealer that he's getting it from, the kilo dealer, should we say. A guy near Oxford, ex-musician, very well contacted up in London. And unbeknownst to me, I've since found out that he was getting it straight from the people that were bringing it into the country by the ton or ton and a half at the time. They were bringing it using yachts, sailing yachts, to bring it in. They were dealing with the Medellin cartel, the end of Pablo Escobar is dead by this point. Right. But the Medellin cartel is still in existence.
Right. This is like the mid-90s, 95, something like that?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So
you're only about 19 years old.
Yeah, well, no, I was probably 20, 21.
Okay. Gotcha.
Oh, look, here they come now.
They heard us. Damn, they really are watching everyone.
So these guys are bringing it in, which is why I was getting it at such a good price. And it was literally pure. I cut it open and it would have the beautiful pearlescent look to it, and the stamp and all the layers of wrapping on it, and the anti-dog relish, the dog. I mean, it was just really good cocaine.
They put chili pepper or something on the packages.
I mean, there was loads. There was about 6 layers of wrapping.
Yeah,
there's the rubber sock around it to make it waterproof. Then there was foil for the X-rays and the scanners and whatnot. And then there was like this layer of relish. Quite often, I call it relish because it was like a really, for the dogs.
I think it's like chili flake liquid that stings the dog's nose and it makes them recoil, something like horrible. That. Yeah.
And then more layers, and then you finally get down to the cocaine.
Right. And so where does a yacht that's bringing in, say, 1,000 keys,
so where
do they come? What part of England do they dock?
Well, the guy that was bringing it in, whose name I cannot say because he was sentenced.
Prince Andrew.
Yeah, not far off. But he got sentenced to 35 years, but he's now free. He was a very well-known criminal in London. Very, he was running quite a large percentage of the British cocaine market.
Okay, white guy?
White guy, Irish guy, and so he had big connections in Southern Ireland. So they would bring it in on the yachts, and they would do what's called coopering. So a fishing boat would come out from Southern Ireland. They would transfer the cocaine from the yacht onto the fishing boats, and they would then take that into Ireland, and then they would bring it into England overland by lorries, using lorries, vans, stuff like that.
Right.
Sometimes they would just come straight to Southampton port or Portsmouth directly on the yacht and load it.
Interesting. There's probably less law enforcement in the Irish waters, especially back
totally.
then.
And I don't know whether he had them paid off or not, but
back then it was easier. Ireland was still super poor.
This is before 9/11 had happened, and it was just things were just quite a lot easier then.
Right. So you got connected with this guy. You're getting his.
I'm connected to the guy in Oxford who's getting it from this guy who's bringing it in.
So he's only charging you a couple points more.
He's putting $1,000 on it.
He's putting $1,000 on. That's it. So you're basically getting the wholesale price.
Pretty much.
Coming off the boat. That's incredible. What were you paying for a kilo?
So we were paying, it was like 25, 26.
Yeah. And you're
£1,000.
And how much are you then giving it to your distributors
28, 30 sometimes.
Wow. So you're making like 3 to 5 points
sometimes
a unit.
Sometimes I make 10 grand in a day, selling like 3 keys of coke in an hour.
Okay, so do you have to buy this? Do they give you? They give you credit?
This was because they were bringing so much in. Most of it was given out to credit in trust. Sometimes I'd be coming back down from London with like £250,000 worth of drugs, sometimes more. I remember going up to London in a transit van because the guy from Oxford also introduced me to a guy for hash. Because I needed so much by this point. Hashish and weed. And I was asking for so much that it wasn't really his thing. So he introduced me to a hash dealer, a Moroccan guy, half Moroccan, half Gibraltarian, who used to live in Spain but is now living in Britain. And I would meet him in an area of London called Blackheath, and there's a common there. There used to be a coffee bar there, and we'd meet near this coffee bar, back up one transit van to another, open the doors, and literally transfer like 200-300 kilos of hash in cardboard boxes from van to van, and drive back. I would drive then back down the M4 to Wales, sell it, get the money, drive back,
Wow.
Or give it out and then collect the money after a week or whatever.
Was it, you were one of those dealers that you had variety? You had ecstasy pills, hash, weed, and coke.
Yeah, I was kind of dealing all the party drugs.
Why, if you have something as sensitive as cocaine, why bother with the other stuff?
The other things did start to tail off as I realized the amount of money that I could make through cocaine. That became the primary source, really. And in the mid to the late 90s, the quality of the ecstasy dipped drastically because they were having trouble getting the what's that chemical, one of the chemicals that's key to making it.
I'm not sure. You're the guy.
Yeah,
You're the
I forgot
expert.
what it's called, PMC or P. It's like the oil they get from the tree.
Yes. Yep.
They were having difficulty getting that.
Mm-hmm.
So the quality of ecstasy dipped. And at that point, I was like, I can make more money dealing cocaine.
Yeah.
And there's also less volume.
Right.
Of
course.
Having to mess about with loads of hundreds of kilos of hash to make the same amount of money as selling 5 kilos of cocaine.
Right.
So it was like,
Yeah.
So cocaine started to become the main thing for me.
So in the late 90s, how many keys were you moving every week, every month?
I'm still at uni. I dropped out of uni in my second year, moved to Bristol. Things got a bit bigger then because I met more people in Bristol, made a connection in Edinburgh, in Scotland, because I knew the prices were much better there.
Right.
And probably between 3 and 5 kilos of coke a week easily.
Yeah.
Sometimes more.
Just handed them off, or are you breaking them down and stepping on it? And
Some I would just hand straight off. 1 or 2 maybe I would break down into like half keys, 9s, and then ounces.
Did you learn how to stretch it, or did you always keep it pure?
Cut, you mean?
Yeah.
It was odd because around the time I was at university, my second year before I dropped out, someone mentioned to me repressing, and it was a new thing. I knew about cutting it, but people had started to actually cut it and repress it back into blocks. And I was like, "What the hell is repress?" And they were like, "Don't you know what?" And I was like, I was getting educated at this point in the cocaine business.
Yeah.
And I realized that actually it was better to sell it pure, because it's always, if I was getting it, because I was getting it at such a good price, I could control more of the market by selling it pure.
Sure.
And at a lower competitive price. Because obviously people that are using drugs tend to go where the best quality is.
Sure.
And if they can get it for the best price as well, you're on a winner.
Yeah. And if you're, giving it out to people that are already going to chop it up, you don't want to dilute it more at the top. Let them worry about that.
Sometimes I would maybe, I say on a kilo, I'd maybe put an ounce into it, which is hardly anything.
An ounce of cut?
Which is like 28 grams or a couple of ounces. Yeah. 50 grams into a kilo.
Right.
Which is hardly noticeable.
Sure. Were you yourself a coke user?
I was using coke, but I was never a big cocaine user. I just couldn't do it. It was just too strong. It would make me too paranoid.
Right.
And I sort of set myself a rule that I'd always do the business in the day, and I would only use the coke when I finished doing the business at the end of the day, when I was home, out of the way, and I didn't have any stress.
Okay. Were you happy? Like, were you taking care of your mom now? Was the money good?
That was one of the main reasons, I think a lot of drug dealers get into the business, obviously to make money, but the idea was to make enough money to be able to, A, help my mum out, and sort out her drink problem, and B, to set up a legit business. Yeah. And I think a lot of drug dealers get into it with the idea of starting a legit business from the proceeds.
I don't think so. We talked to a lot of drug dealers on here, and they had zero plans to do anything besides sell drugs, and they blew all their money. So you don't look like a guy that spends more than he brings in.
I try not to.
Am I wrong about that?
But I try. Obviously, when you're growing up, you in your early days, I ended up renting the wing of a manor house, had some pretty expensive cars, but I grew out of that pretty quickly. And then I realized that actually it was better to keep a low profile.
Of course.
And, I was investing money in shares, and I wanted to get into property, buying and selling property. And I was starting to get into it, and then got arrested in May of 2000.
Right. Tell us about that bust.
Yeah. So, obviously, like I said, things have got quite big. Well, very big for English scale of things. And it was my girlfriend's birthday. I'd moved out of Bristol because she had been going out with a Jamaican, half Jamaican, half Irish guy. He was a bit of a yardie.
Sure.
And he had instigated the theft of a kilo of coke, and there'd been car chase, me chasing him around Bristol, there'd nearly been a gunfight in a restaurant, and it all got really out of control. And I was just like, I'm moving out of Bristol. I want a quiet life. We'd gone through people's front doors. We'd tracked down their families and everything. It got pretty heavy. And, so anyway, I moved out of Bristol with his ex and moved back to Stroud, out into the countryside, somewhere quiet where no one knew where I lived, particularly, so he didn't know where I lived. And also, so the police didn't know where I lived. And, so day after my girlfriend's birthday, I think it was May the 15th or 16th, and I'd gone out to do a few drops and gone up to somewhere near Stow-on-the-Wold, which is near Cheltenham. Cotswolds. So the Cotswolds is quite a famous area of Britain, very picturesque, which I lived quite near there,
right
on the edge of. So anyway, go into this house, drop off 3 ounces of cocaine, have a cup of tea with the guy, and collect some money off him. Go out, get in a van, driving a big red transit van, so you can't miss me. It was on hire, but anyway, drive about 7 miles up the road towards Cheltenham.
That means a rental, people, on rental, hire.
Yeah. And suddenly there's a marked police car, comes up behind me, blue lights me, pulls me over, and I think, it's a routine traffic stop.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. Yeah. They'd seen me, the house had been under surveillance. So they'd seen me come out of the house. I think they knew that I think they had some intel on me already. And I had a briefcase, a bit like a doctor's briefcase. And it was in the front of the van anyway. They went straight for that, pulled it out, jemmied it open with a crowbar. So they broke it open with a crowbar, and inside there were like 1,000 pills, some more coke, some hash for the next drop.
Yeah.
And so I get arrested. There was a sawed-off shotgun in the back of the van, broken down into component parts.
Is that can they add that charge? Like if you get caught with a gun on top of drugs, can they enhance your charge?
Oh yeah. That doesn't help things.
No, especially not in Britain, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's why
guns.
I kept it broken down into its component parts.
I see.
Because I knew that if it was broken down, at least it wasn't in a usable form.
Right.
And I was sort of dealing in antiques. And so I tried to play that it was, not usable, and I bought it as an antique.
I'm hunting fox. Yeah.
I'm out hunting pheasants and rabbits and out shooting grouse. Old chap. Old bean with a sawn-off shotgun. Can you imagine?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
On a pheasant shoot.
Right.
He's shooting everybody.
Yeah, that's how Dick Cheney got shot.
Yeah, because the spray goes a little bit wide.
Right. So, okay.
Did
they have prior, like, did they have an investigation going on you, or was this just a chance?
They had that house under surveillance, so that I think they were more investigating the guy who I'd gone to see, and some other guy that I'd never heard of that was also arrested. So me and the guy in the house get arrested. He'd managed to get most of the coke down the toilet, luckily. So they only found traces and some scales and a bit of money and I think a tick list. So he gets bail. I get arrested. I spent 6 days in Cheltenham police station, go no comment all the way through, apart from at one point, because of the place I was living in, this manor house that I'd rented, in the stable block of the manor house, there was a special constable, like a junior police officer living there. Called Penny, who I used to play tennis with. I had no problem with her. She had no clue what I was doing whatsoever. I said I was dealing in antiques and like messing about online, dealing in shares, stocks and shares. So I used to play tennis with her. Anyway, a friend of mine thought it'd be a good idea to expose an informant, to have a loud conversation in front of this informant in a pub, in a bar in Stroud, about how they were going to kill this police officer. Because they thought she was responsible for my arrest. It had the adverse effect. It, in fact, made my case, it made me look really
worse.
Bad. Yeah, exactly. A lot worse. Because at that point, I'd been held incommunicado, so no phone
bail.
calls. No phone calls.
Oh, wow.
No contact with anybody. This is the third day of my custody in the police station. I was there 6 days in the police station.
You don't have the right to call your lawyer?
I had my lawyer come in.
Okay.
But that was it. No phone calls to family, no visits, nothing. So basically my lawyer said, look, you're going to have to make a comment on this because otherwise the police have basically said they're going to f you up. They're going to make your life hell, which they did anyway in the end. They don't like it when one of their own gets threatened with their life. I mean, they took it really seriously because you think I've been in the police station for 3 days and they've linked me to massive crime families up in London by this point.
Right.
You know, that I'm not going to mention.
Right.
You can imagine some of the key people.
Right.
Anyway, you think certainly one of their police officers is getting threatened with their life, and I haven't even had a phone call. How's this happening? So I had to make all this comment, you know, that I was really friendly with her, that I played tennis with her. I said, ask her yourself. I've got no problem with her. And they said, look, we know it's something to do with you. Call your people off. Otherwise, you know, your life's going to be hell. So I said, I'll do what I can, but when I get a phone call, because you've not given me a phone call.
I don't buy any of this. You limeys aren't going to touch a cop. Stop being tough.
Look at my case papers. That's what I can say.
I mean, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about these, you know, I don't know. I don't buy it. If you're going to kill a cop, now, obviously they take that very seriously.
They take it seriously.
They take it seriously, of course, because it's such a middle finger, you know. In Colombia, yes, cops get killed all the time, but
police officers have been killed here. But I mean, it's rare.
It's rare.
If you kill a police officer here, you're never getting out.
You're never going to get out. It's just like in America.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was the result of this?
Well,
what
just
came of it?
Basically, my security went through the roof. The security level that they were holding me at went through the roof.
Right.
I was there another 3 days, carried on going, no comment afterwards.
Yeah.
They then remanded me into Gloucester prison. I was the only potential category A prisoner in the whole prison. So to feed me, I wasn't allowed to talk to any other prisoners. They put me on the second floor of the prison, so I couldn't tunnel out or escape.
Yeah. I
had to exercise in the yard on my own. All my phone calls were recorded. All my letters photocopied. Visits behind the glass. And just to feed me, they would close the whole wing down, open my door, put 2 officers behind me, 2 in front, walk me down to the hot plate, the surgery.
Wow.
Get my food, walk me back to my cell, and lock me in. And literally, they would come and search my cell daily, rip it apart, strip search me, just trash all my stuff.
Just punitive.
They really
punishment. Yeah. Just being dickheads.
It was called being on the book. So any movements that in and out of the cell, they would note down the time that I was taken out of the cell, where I went, what I was doing, who I spoke to. Wow. Everything.
They're trying to get you to crack.
Well, just not particularly. They were just, high security,
punishing you
to make sure I didn't do anything, or attempt to escape or have anyone killed.
Well, but they were trying to give you. Were they trying to get you to give up your suppliers and these crime families?
No, because I mean, I went no comment all the way through. Right. I mean, it seemed like they knew quite a lot already anyway. So
right.
Right. I'm pretty well anyway. So
yeah. Okay. So what are you facing?
So, I mean, I went guilty after 9 months.
Yeah. So they gave you a plea.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah, plea deal. So they offer you. They offer you, so say, like 10 off or something.
Yeah. So I ended up with 5.
Okay.
First offense.
Right.
Which is very low. But my co-defendants, whilst I was in prison, did something else. They then get arrested. So I ended up spending nearly 2 years on remand, even though I went guilty after 9 months. So when it came to sentencing at Bristol Crown Court, the judge was like, why is this guy being held for nearly 2 years after he went guilty after 9 months?
Yeah.
So,
So you're basically held in what, for Americans to understand that, he was basically in jail.
Yeah.
County jail or jail.
County jail.
Not awaiting trial.
Sentence.
And then even after he was sentenced after 9 months, they still...
No, I wasn't sentenced. I had to wait for everybody else's trial.
Oh, wow.
So I was sat there twiddling my thumbs, waiting.
Technically not guilty of anything for 2 years.
Well, no, because I'd already gone guilty.
So, but they didn't ship you off to a prison.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so you really didn't do much prison time after they shipped you out of... Yeah,
because I'd already done nearly 2 years.
Right, so they give you...
They then shipped me to one of the most secure prisons in Britain at the time, which was Parkhurst on the Isle of Wight. On an island, a bit like Alcatraz. It's on an island just off Southampton, Isle of Wight. So I'm on an island in the English Channel.
Dude, I can't imagine what horrible weather you guys have down there.
Yeah, exactly. I was
raining
reading,
and windy.
What's the great story? God, I can't think. You know that classic story?
Shutter Island?
No.
Escape from Alcatraz?
Yeah, Count Monte Cristo. That's the one. So I'm reading that, Ray's on the island, and I'm like,
I can just imagine you with a big beard. Yeah, just reading by candlelight. Yeah, exactly. Your only friend is a pigeon in the window.
Yeah, a pet rat.
Yeah, exactly.
Terrible.
Exactly.
And they said, "Oh, do you want to pack tea bags for a job?" And I was like, "No, just leave me at my cell. Right. I'm quite happy. I'll just stay in my cell. Just lock the door."
But this is a pivotal time in your trafficking career because this is where you start to read and you discover this kind of prophesize the future of drug trafficking. So go into this, please.
So whilst I'm at Gloucester, 9/11 happens. So suddenly all the security level at the airports and the seaports goes through the roof. Yeah. And inadvertently, and amongst all this, loads of traffickers, like drug mules and other traffickers, are getting caught at ports, airports, seaports with loads of drugs, and they're all coming into prison and going, now there's all these new scanners, all this new technologies on the way in. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, the days of bringing blocks of cocaine in by shipping container, just chucking it in boxes with a few bananas on top. Yeah, that's finished. That's done. That's not going to be happening for much longer. Yeah,
walking with kilos in a suitcase through the airport,
like in the film Blow, where Johnny Depp's on the plane and he's got all those people coming in. But back in the day, when it was so easy, and I'm thinking, that's all finished. I'm reading books and I'm hearing about ways of impregnating cocaine, things like soaking it into shirts, clothing, paper, but that's all kind of really old school and really basic. Mm-hmm. And then I was getting the Times newspaper once a week, Sunday Times. And one Sunday I open it up and I'm reading, and I come across this article about this shipment of cocaine that's been seized at a seaport that's come in by container, and it was plastic garden furniture, for your patio. Mm-hmm. And the cocaine was in the plastic, the
fibers
mixed into the plastic.
Right.
So they had to melt the plastic down with chemicals and whatnot to get the cocaine out of it. Right. Nobody got arrested. And I was like, holy that is the future of cocaine trafficking.
So it's not coke hidden within furniture.
No.
The cocaine is in the furniture. It is the furniture.
It is the furniture.
Right.
It is the plastic.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is absolute genius. Yeah. And it was like the first time I'd heard of it. And I was like, this is, wow, that has got to be the way to do it. Right. Because it just lit a light bulb in my head. Yeah.
It beats the scanners.
Yeah, everything.
It's hands
X-ray,
off. Yeah.
And, later on when I got into it, we were able to put a chemical into the rubber to counteract the reactive liquid test even. Right. So we could even beat that. Wow. So it was kind of, how are they going to get it unless, there was so many elements of doubt. And in British law, if there's an element of doubt, the case gets thrown out.
Whoa.
So yeah,
common law, baby.
So you
find me guilty, not the other way around.
Exactly.
Sorry. Wow. So this was your Johnny Depp and Blow moment where he meets Diego. You had the wrong dream. Yeah. Like this was your light bulb moment.
Yeah. So but I mean, at this point in prison, I was like, I didn't really want to know about drug dealing anymore.
Oh, so you thought you were out of the game? Yeah, you were like, okay, I'm really done now.
It devastated my family and friends and everything. Relationship.
Because you don't really have a ton of criminals in your community, like amongst your family circle.
Yeah. My uncle was kind of like pretty heavy on my mum's side. He was not a criminal, but I think he's dead now, but he was in the military and he wanted me to go into the military. Okay. I remember him, I only ever met him about 6 or 7 times.
But you didn't have a lot of people incarcerated, so it wasn't normal for somebody in the family to be locked up.
Around my family, no.
Okay.
No.
So that was hard on your mom?
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, you know, from me wanting to help and make things better, it actually made things 10 times worse.
Right.
You know, she had a mental breakdown and, you know,
Oh no.
ended up in a psych ward and all the rest of it. So,
Oh my God.
you know, you can imagine how that made me feel, you know.
Yeah.
Just, you know.
Yeah. What about your dad at this point?
Yeah, he was, yeah, everyone was devastated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
So you thought, okay, and this is the second time now you told yourself,
yeah, exactly.
okay,
and
I'm really finished.
Yeah, I just said to my co-Ds, you know, we're so well known to the British police now, you know, that our modus operandi and the way that we were dealing, we can't go back to that.
No.
Because, you know, when we get out, we're going to be watched, we're going to be surveilled.
Yeah.
And it's just not going to work. So I showed them this article and I said, look, I've just read about this. This is absolutely genius. So I said, if when we get out, if I could, sorry, I can never twitch my eye talking about it.
No, that's all right.
If when we get out, and this is the point at which this guy cut the this other podcast and did this TikTok thing.
Okay, whatever. Yeah,
just tell us you. So I said to them, if I ring you, you're going to know what the phone call's about, and I'm going to basically want to start bringing cocaine in from South America.
If you don't ring them, that means you'll never hear from me again.
Well, we'll stay in contact as friends and whatnot because you are friends. But on the scale of drug dealing sort of things, you know, the only reason I'll call you about drugs is for this. I'm not going to be ringing you to start dealing drugs again.
Right. So you're not going to be, doing it like the old ways. Yeah, exactly. We're going to level up, if anything, or else we're not going to do it.
Yeah. So I get out and, you know, I'd only done 2.5 years. So I've still got all my old contacts and I'm getting barraged by phone calls from people.
Did you lose your money when you went in? Or what's your money situation?
They put a freeze, a confiscation order on me for about, I think it was about £350,000. They didn't get it all. Right. I had money in stocks and shares and stuff and whatnot.
Right.
But they got a lump of it.
Right.
So I'm getting people ringing me all the time, just saying, you know, can you get us this? Can you get us that? Do you want to be involved in something? Do you want to, you know, do this, do that? And I just keep saying, no, I don't want to know. I'm out. You know, I'm painting and decorating. You know, I'm trying to stay straight. Then I start dabbling in drugs at the weekends with my girlfriend. Yeah. Same girlfriend.
She stayed with you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And of course, that's the slippery slide back into it.
Yeah. When you start using it.
Yeah. And before I know it, I'm, you know, starting to do a few little weed deals on the side just to bolster the money.
Yeah.
And the real crunch came when one of the clients that I was painting and decorating for started messing me around with the payment. Obviously not really knowing who, you know, my background.
Right.
And I was thinking, you know, I could just make a phone call and have you kneecapped or something.
Right.
And it just really pissed me off. And it was one of those days where you just go, this.
Right.
I mean, I've had enough.
Yep.
And it was what I call a it day. And I just went, this. And I picked up the phone and I made that phone call. And
who'd you call?
The guy in Oxford. Or near Oxford.
The one bringing it in, whose guys were bringing it in.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Because he had all the good contacts up in London. Although by that point, I'd also developed some of my own, to be honest. But anyway, I phoned him and I said, look, can you find me a Colombian or a Bolivian or Peruvian or any South American who we can get to buy, you know, who can supply us cocaine in South America, preferably that can impregnate it into plastic or rubber. And he said, well, look, give me a couple of weeks and I'll make some phone calls up to London and see what I can do. So a couple of weeks goes by. Obviously, we didn't talk on the phone because I said, if I phone you, well, it's got to be face to face. Nothing said on the phone.
Right.
So we were doing all this face to face. So he rings me up and he said, come and meet me. So I go and meet him and he said, look, I've found a Colombian and a Chilean that are up for meeting you. The initial meet, we'll just go and buy some coke from them just to see what they're like. So I had a guy in Newport, an old contact who'd been ringing me, asking me if I could get him kilos of coke. So I ring him up and I say, look, I've got someone, I kind of explained why I wanted to meet them, that I wanted to start bringing coke in. Would he possibly finance the operation? And he said, yeah, I'll put the money up for it if you can get it off the ground. So I said, look, I can get you the coke, kilos of coke that you want. Give me the money for a kilo. I'll go and meet these guys, see what they're all about. So he gave me the money, went out to London, met these, the Colombian and the Chilean, bought a kilo of coke, had a bit of a conversation with them, went away, and they seemed okay. Came back, I don't know, about another week later, said, want another kilo. And then I said, look, really, the reason that I'm actually here is because I want to start importing cocaine into Britain, preferably impregnated in rubber or plastic. Can you do that? A, can you get the cocaine? Obviously you can, because you're selling it to me. And B, can you impregnate it? And they said, as it happens, we're already bringing it in impregnated in rubber in the ground sheets of tents, like for camping.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is destiny. This is because, you know, like I said, I'm a strong believer in destiny.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like it was meant to happen.
Right.
It obviously was, because obviously I'm sat here talking about it as part of my life.
Yeah.
And, you know, people say, well, would you, if you went back and you wanted to change things, would you? And I said, well, yeah, obviously I'll probably change some things, but I think everybody has their destiny, and is it pre-written? I don't know. But
so that was the turning point.
Yeah. I mean, you know, to me, it was full steam ahead, really. And I said,
you didn't have to go to South America to make these contacts. They came to you.
Yeah, they were already in
That's
London.
wild.
They were living in London.
Yeah.
They were well established. The Colombian had already been involved massively with the Cali cartel. He was from Cali. So he had originally been in Spain running what they call an office for the Cali cartel, dealing, you know, with huge shipments coming in 2-3 tons, distributing it, you know, hundreds of kilos at a time.
Right.
Then he moved to London. They'd opened an office in London. And then I think, you know, things have fallen apart. I don't know if something had happened. And he'd become an independent operator.
Right.
It actually transpired that when I was arrested in Stow-on-the-Wold, you know, when I went to prison in England, and I'd been getting cocaine. Basically, the guys that... Let's rewind. The guy from Oxford...
Just flow, baby. Just flow. You're in your head. Just talk, baby.
The guy from Oxford that I was dealing with, who was getting the coke off these guys that were bringing it in by yacht, that all fell apart in 1998. We were sat at Marble Arch in London waiting for one of them to turn up with 5 kilos of coke for us. He didn't make it. And we had a system of pages where we'd go to a telephone box, page him with a number of the telephone box, and he would go to another box, do a telephone box-to-box call.
Yeah.
So we were sat by a telephone box waiting for him to turn up or to ring. He was on the way to us, didn't turn up. He got arrested, we later found out, half a mile from reaching us with 29 kilos of cocaine in the boot of his car on a Friday night. Wow. He'd been set up by it was called Operation Dreadnought, I think. You can look it up. I'll tell you the guy's name. The guy that was operating the whole thing was Brian Brendan Wright. He was nicknamed the Milkman. Huge drug dealer. And that was the guy that it was coming from.
So basically, that had fallen apart by the time it's 2003, 2004.
So
now there's actually opportunity for you to become the new importer in many ways.
Yes, well, to some extent. But so the first guy gets arrested. This was one of his right-hand men that we were meeting. It wasn't him.
Yeah.
So his right-hand man gets arrested with 29 kilos. The local police had bumbled into a massive operation by the National Crime Agency and had messed up a 2-year surveillance operation on them, including, I think, us. Me and the guy from Oxford, we must have been in the surveillance at some point. So they then had to arrest all of the people involved. So they found 660 kilos on a fishing boat in Kerry, in Southern Ireland. And they then found another 440 kilos in London, arrested 14 people. It was one of the biggest cocaine seizures in British history at that time. And it was huge news.
Yeah.
And we had been half a mile from that guy reaching us and us getting arrested as well.
Yeah.
So that was when trouble started for me. I think that's what led to me getting arrested in 2000. So the police became aware of me in 1998 because of all that.
Okay.
And then they sort of kept an eye on me and then took me down in 2000.
I see.
So that was how things went.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure.
All right. So bring us back to now this Colombian and Chilean.
So what I just wanted to say was, so they had them having been arrested in 1998, I got introduced to another cocaine dealer connected to a very big crime family from North London, from Islington. I won't say who. And one of their guys was in Erith. And it turns out, years later, I'm driving around London with this Colombian, and he says, "Oh, we got to go to Erith to meet a guy." And I said, "The guy's name is not called, should we say, John?" And it turned out it was the same guy that I'd met all those years before that had been supplying me cocaine when these other guys had been busted. And it was the same Colombian that had been given it to him, who was given it to me, that I was now working with.
Yeah, so you've moved up the chain. You've skipped the ladder.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And all that, I'd been to prison in between and all sorts of shit happened.
Yeah.
And suddenly I'm with it. I mean, what are the chances of that? Yeah. It's a very small world at that level.
Mind-blowing. It's a small country too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've found, now you're getting it. You've become those guys that were getting it off the ship. Yeah.
Kind of. Yeah. Well, yeah.
So, okay. So how long does it take to build up? How does this...
So I have this conversation with the Colombian and the Chilean, and I say, "Look, I want to start bringing the cocaine in. Would you be interested in forming a partnership with me? I can bring money to the table, investment to upscale things. And, I've got a big dealer base. I've got loads of people that will buy as much as we can bring in. I've got a lot that I can bring to the table. I can get passengers that will go out to bring the drugs in for us, drug mules." So they said, "Sure, why not?" And so we formed a partnership, the three of us, the Colombian, Chilean, and me. The other guy kind of was a silent partner, should we say. He didn't really want to be involved. It was a bit too heavy. Even though before, he'd been the one supplying me, it become even too heavy for him now. So you see how I'm going up the chain, gradually. So we formed this partnership anyway and start bringing it in. I actually go out to Ecuador to collect the first one because I think, well, it's the first one. The police aren't going to know about us yet because we're only just starting. So I wanted to do the first one because I didn't want to start sending, say, you to do something that I hadn't already done. So I wanted to go and meet the guy from Cali, our supplier in Quito. To talk to him, to meet him. I just wanted to make sure that the thing got from A to B.
Okay, describe the operation.
So, the cocaine was getting impregnated or converted into latex. That was then getting made into the ground sheet of a tent. The guy would then transport the tent from Cali to a third country who didn't produce cocaine. So we chose, it was a toss-up between Ecuador or Venezuela. And we chose Ecuador because they already had contacts in Ecuador they were working with in Quito.
Right.
So they had a safe house there.
How does the cocaine what is the scientific process of breaking down the coke into liquid to then be put into the mesh of the tent?
Yeah. So the cocaine was, exactly as you said, made into a solution. And then you can get liquid latex in South America. So you would get liquid latex, you would put the cocaine into solution, you would then mix the two together, put it into trays and try and set it very thinly, get it as thin as you can, and let it set naturally, so it's almost like gelatine. And then open up the ground sheet of the tent, put it in between the two layers, sew the tent back up, and they would do a really good job. So it looked like it hadn't been tampered with.
Right.
And of course, going through an X-ray, it looks like it's part of the tent.
Right.
Rubber doesn't show up on an X-ray or latex.
Ah.
So, or a scanner. And like I said, they were able to put in a chemical that could counter the liquid test, the reactive.
Right.
So they would put in a chemical that would counter the reactive test, if you see what I mean.
It's unbelievable.
So, and also it would beat the dog. So those were the four main tests at the time.
Right.
So it was almost infallible.
Right.
So I thought, well, if it's that good, I'm going to go and get the first one, because the chances of me getting stopped are virtually zero.
Right.
Even though I'm known.
Right. So your contact from Cali, the one who's over in London, does he have his suppliers are doing all of this, like getting it prepared?
In Cali, yeah.
Did you go see the factory where they were producing it?
I did later on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why would you go over there? It seems suspect for a white guy who's on parole.
Well, it was kind of, and it was suspect because I got stopped on the way back in Holland.
Right.
It's a crazy story. I'd forgotten about the luggage allowance. I flew out there with KLM, and I suppose their luggage allowance was like 30 kilos or something like that at the time. It wasn't carrying much luggage on the way out. Whilst I'm waiting for this guy to turn up from Cali, I'm going out in the shops buying my family presents, things like ceramic plates, big heavy ceramic plates, boxes of cigars, leather jackets, loads of that weighs quite a lot.
Why?
Just
to look like you're
just presents for family, because it was cheap and stuff.
Yeah.
And also I'm trying to do all the tourist stuff, so I've got a backstory. So I'm building up a backstory.
Right.
I go to visit Cotopaxi volcano. I'm collecting loads of brochures, just so I've got a story in place to cover me in case I get stopped.
Yeah.
And I then get this tent, which we had 5 kilos in this first one, and it was a 10-man tent that weighed about 30 or 40 kilos alone on its own. It was huge, stood about up to my waist, and I'm 5'10", so it was big.
What is the cover story for sending a tent from Ecuador to the United Kingdom? Is it no? But my question is there a fake tent manufacturing company that they produce as a guise to be sending a tent? Because I know Colombia exports a lot of furniture. That's like one of the things they make there.
No.
Or this was just a fake name with a fake address.
No. Yeah, I wasn't posting it. I was carrying it.
Okay, wow. So you're actually carrying this tent through customs.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
Yeah, so I like I said, I wanted to go and carry it through so that when I'm sending other people to do what I've just done, I wanted to know what the systems were, what to look out for, how to act. And I was, it's not the first time I'd imported something and gone through customs and nearly been caught. So, I was that confident in the system. I thought it's highly unlikely I'm going to get caught.
Wow.
So this is why I'm on about the weight allowance.
I see.
So I get back to the airport. So I've got all these gifts. And now I've got a tent that weighs about 30 or 40 kilos, and it's huge.
And is it wrapped? Like, can you carry it?
Oh yes, but it's it's a tent. It's like in a
It's got like a handheld.
Yeah.
It's got a hand holder.
Yeah, like
what do you call that?
Zip. Well, is it like a zip cord on the top?
Okay, I see. So you look like a British backpacker that's been camping and traveling about South America,
you got it.
Which is very common.
Yeah.
The Brits and the Australians are all over that area.
You got it. So
okay.
That's what I'm trying to portray.
I see. That's a good backstory.
Yeah.
So you feel confident.
Yeah. So I get to the airport and I put all this stuff on the conveyor belt, and I'm like, I don't know, about 80 or 90 kilos over the luggage allowance. And they're like, oh, you've got to get rid of some stuff, or you've got to pay the excess. And I didn't have enough to pay the excess. And they were like, why don't you get rid of that tent? And I was like, I can't,
That's an expensive tent.
Yeah, it's really,
I really love that tent.
So right in front of them, I'm giving away all these brand new gifts to people that are working in the restaurants, the cafes, and they all think it's Christmas. Yeah. And obviously the desk staff at KLM are watching me going, what the fuck is this joker doing?
Right.
So there's red flags going up all over the place.
Right.
I'm probably still on parole, probation, whatever. Obviously I've got a criminal record for drugs.
Yeah.
And here's me dishing out all these gifts right in front of the airport stuff.
And now let me ask you this. Why, as a smuggler going through flying commercially, why not put the tent? Why not check it?
No, well, that's why it was going into the hold.
Oh, okay.
I'm not. It's not hand lock.
I see.
It's
You're
going,
at the airline.
Yeah. It's going
Right.
into the hold.
Okay.
Yeah. Which was lucky because that's what saved me actually. So I get it all down anyway. I think I paid some excess. So I get on the plane. So I'm through customs in Ecuador, and I'm like, woohoo! Yeah, made it. So fly to Holland, arrive in Holland, and there's literally a row of drug agents, Dutch drug agents, in plain clothes, and I'm at the back of the queue, and there's like various lines of people, passengers queuing, to go through the different, and there's a line of agents, and one of them looks down the line, sees me, turns to his friend, says something in Dutch, and they all look at me, and I think, that's it, I'm done. I'm not going home. They know. Well, they certainly know something anyway.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I get to the front of the queue and they say, we need to talk to you. Come with us. And they put me in a holding room. There's about 3 Europeans and about 30 or 40 South Americans.
Right.
And my turn comes and they get me into the office and sit me down and they say, what have you been doing? And I said, I've been to Cotopaxi volcano. I'm a tourist. I'm interested in archaeology. I've been doing all this, blah, blah, blah.
Backstory's fire, though.
Yeah. I'm getting all these brochures going, I've been here, been there, done this. And, the interview goes on. And after about 25 minutes to half an hour, they said, and I'm thinking any minute now, they're going to plonk this tent down on the table and go, what's this? We know, and I'm just there waiting for the moment. And, half an hour, 25 minutes goes by, and he says, oh, sorry to detain you. You're free to go. And I was like, there's no way that they don't know it's in there. They must know it's in there. Otherwise, why have they stopped me? So in my head, I'm thinking maybe they've contacted the British police and arranged for me to be arrested in Britain, along with my, they're going to follow me all the way through to see who I meet, and, or, like they sometimes do. Yeah. They'll let it go through and take everybody down. Yeah. So now I'm really paranoid, and I'm thinking, that they're going to let me go through. Yeah. So that flight from Holland, from Schiphol to Stansted, I landed at Stansted, just north of London, which is a smaller airport. But even still, it's only a 45-minute flight. The plane hardly takes off before it's landed. And I'm thinking, my pants all the way back.
You're not sleeping on that flight.
And I'm thinking, man. Anyway, land, and obviously the tent had been in the hold, so it had been transferred from one plane straight to the other. Right. Whilst we're on the tarmac. Yeah. And I think that's what saved me. So come out of the plane at Stansted, get to the luggage carousel, and there's the tent going round and round. I get my bag and I watch the tent for a little bit longer, seeing if anybody's, if there's any obvious surveillance or any obvious looking police. And I think, it's another it moment. Yeah. It's either now or never. So I just grab it and nothing, and I'm expecting to be
pounced on.
Nothing happens. And I think, wow. And I just walk straight through the Green Channel out, and I'm out.
And you don't have to pass customs if you're already in Europe?
Yeah, no, I pass. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So at that point,
in Britain,
Britain was still in Europe.
Right. So you don't have to go through customs again after you get there from Holland.
Exactly. Okay. So this has made me start thinking, and I'll come back to this. So I hadn't even told my partners that I was flying back on this day. I thought nobody needs to know the date that I'm coming back in, apart from me, so that no one can tell anybody. Right. So I get out of the airport and I use a payphone to ring them. And I said, I'm back. And they said, back where? And I said, I'm back. And they were like, what? And I take a train down to London. They've got a lab, a flat arranged with a makeshift laboratory in it.
Right. How do they break down 5 kilos of liquid cocaine?
It's not liquid. It's in the rubber.
So the powder is in the rubber?
Yeah. It is a piece of plastic. It's a piece of latex. It's like you imagine... To give you an exact example, you imagine the inner tube of a bicycle. Yeah. Like the rubber inner tube pump. You imagine that rubber is just like that.
Wow. So
that is the cocaine.
It is rubber cocaine.
Yeah,
It's not
it's rubber.
It's rubber.
It's a piece of rubber.
That's unreal.
Yeah.
So how do they?
So we then had to cut it up because the cocaine is only present on the surface. So you had to cut it up as small as you could. So we sat there for hours. First of all, obviously, we open up the tent, strip out the sheets that contain the cocaine, and then we had to sit there for hours cutting this up as small as we could with scissors. We tried all sorts of methods using paper shredders, but it would just jam up the shredder, and we couldn't find anything that would like mince up rubber, because it would just gum up all the mechanism.
Right.
So the only way that we could do it was with scissors. So we would sit there for hours and hours cutting these panels up as small as we could to maximize the surface area. We would then put that in methanol, pure alcohol, which is formaldehyde, 99.9% pure alcohol. That would then bring the cocaine back out into solution. We would then add a little bit of acetone, which is, when I say a cutting agent, it's not a cutting agent as in mixing. It's like to purify it more. We would then filter that through activated carbon and filter papers 2 or 3 times to get out any impurities, because sometimes there'd be colorants in it or carbon to beat the X-rays and stuff. Because anyway.
So you have it dripping through a filter. So basically like a cheesecloth almost.
We would get lab grade filter papers and activated carbon powder, which is excellent at filtering any impurities out.
Right.
So it would go through that, and you would really basically, when you soaked it in the methanol, you'd see it change color from being clear alcohol to like the color of gasoline. So once it was that color, you'd know that most of the cocaine was out of that rubber.
Right.
We would then re-soak anything. We'd put that rubber back into fresh methanol to make sure we got it all out.
Right.
So the liquid that was filtered, we would then using wok for your stir fry on a Friday night.
Yeah.
So
a wok. Yeah.
Non-stick wok.
Yeah.
We would have to have electric hobs with powerful extractor fans over the top, because obviously any naked flames and the whole thing explodes.
Right.
So we'd evaporate off all the alcohol. We were using base reoxidada, which is base cocaine, reoxidized base cocaine. So that's cocaine without the hydrochloric acid in it. So it's it's basically almost like crack. It's base.
Yeah.
So we would add a little bit of hydrochloric acid to the liquid, which is needed to break down the membrane of your nose to get the cocaine into the bloodstream. Then evaporate off all the alcohol using these woks, non-stick woks, and you'd see it start to congeal in the bottom. You then turn the heat right down.
Yeah.
And then so it doesn't burn.
Yeah.
So then, you keep stirring it and stirring it and stirring it, and it would turn into powder, and then you'd have pure cocaine, baby.
And so you got 5 keys in that one wok?
No.
Or do you have to do it batches at a time?
Yeah, batches at a time.
And you're sure you got all the rubber out of that coke so people weren't sniffing up rubber?
That's what all the filtration process is.
So you basically just described how they make cocaine in Colombia. The whole hydrochloric and draining it and cleaning it off.
Some of it.
It's almost like you're remaking cocaine.
Yeah.
It's almost.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean,
that must have taken hours.
Yeah. It was quite a long process. I mean, you're looking like 2 or 3 days fully to do that.
Wow. And did you have this process already, or were they the ones that had the expertise?
They had a chemist, but then I learned it. They taught me. We would then repress it. We had a 15-ton floor standing hydraulic press. They made up a box. We got 2 compressed steel plates for the top and bottom.
Right.
We'd put it in cheesecloth. We'd put a couple of numbers on the top so that it had numbers impressed in the kilo, and we'd repress it. We did normally we were cutting it as well at this point. So we would put we'd do a couple of tests. We'd wash it up into crack,
Right.
see how pure. I mean, the cocaine that came out was pure,
Right.
but we would cut it with different percentages of what the cut we were using was phenytoin, because it would come back in the wash when you washed it up into crack cocaine. It would bind really closely with the cocaine.
Okay.
So it would come back. So cocaine that was only 60% pure would present as 90% pure, even though it had 30 or 40% cut in there, which was phenytoin,
right,
which is an analgesic.
Okay. So your Coke now, how many kilos would 5 of pure turn
make that into about 7.
Okay. Yeah. So because for all that effort, you need to squeeze out as much profit as you can. And so you've got 7 kilos now.
And we decided that rather than selling to loads of people, because I had a couple of people that would just buy everything.
Yeah.
So we thought the least people that knew what we were doing, the better, obviously.
Right.
So we narrowed it down to a couple of people that we would just take all of it to. So one of those was down in Wales, in Port Talbot. I'm not going to say his name, but hi. Still good friends with him. He's out of the game now anyway.
Okay.
But I would take it all down to him, drop it on him. He'd give me like a big bag of cash to come back with.
How much would he pay you per kilo?
We were doing these, well, it depended on the price at the time for repress, but we were charging about 24,000, 25,000 still, because it was still really good.
Right. So you're taking in about 150,000 from 7 kilos. 150, maybe a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
175 would be the math.
Yeah. So, because each of us were making between 60 and 80,000
per run
profit.
Yeah. So how much would what were the costs to you from the, paying the people in Colombia to melt it down into rubber and make the tent? What was about your cost per kilo?
It was about 30 grand we were paying. That covered the people in Colombia.
Right. The expenses, the trip, all of that. Okay. Yeah, great. So this is that's a good micro trafficking operation.
Yeah.
How does this expand?
So that we, after that, just briefly going back to having been stopped in Holland, that made me start to think, why was I stopped in Holland, and why was it the Dutch police that carried out the search on the plane?
Right.
So I found out about the Schengen Agreement, and if you read it up in the Schengen Agreement, whichever country the plane lands in first in Europe, they have the responsibility to carry out the search of that plane. So I realized that if we got through because there were no direct flights into Britain from Ecuador or Venezuela.
Right.
So we always had to come through Europe. So I realized that as long as we got through that first point at Europe,
you were good.
We were good. So we would have passengers coming in to, say, Spain. I would then have them come out of the airport or just stay in the airport and buy an EasyJet or Ryanair flight, which is a budget airline, into Britain as if they just come from Spain as a holidaymaker, or even have them come out of the airport and come overland by train and then by ferry or by car.
So you were obviously changing up points of entry into Europe for your mules. Yeah. What were the best airports to fly into?
Spain was pretty easy. Portugal, Italy, most of them, to be honest.
And this is the early mid 2000s when there wasn't all this press around those countries as being hubs for drug trafficking from South America.
Yeah, exactly. Ecuador was much more chill then. Venezuela wasn't as unstable. I mean, they were a lot more stable.
Okay, so then you made this run yourself. You start hiring couriers after this.
Very quickly. I mean, I already had a couple of people lined up to go. Okay. So we started sending, we tried to do at least 1 or 2 a month.
Okay. And are these white Brits, or who are these people?
We tended to look for people that preferably didn't have a criminal record.
Sure.
Certainly not for drugs anyway. We preferred the people that were working, people that were presentable, that were pretty calm, that stayed calm under pressure. And there were loads. Yeah. And then they would start recommending people that they knew, and it just snowballed, and there were loads of people.
How much were you paying them?
We would pay them between 10 and 12,000. It didn't matter whether the minimum we would bring back in any one tent was 3 kilos. It was always between 3 and, well, I say that, between 2 and 5 kilos.
Okay. Gotcha. And what were the different methods? I'm sure you didn't just stick with tents. Like, what were some of the other?
Yeah, we had, as well as bringing on our own shipments, we started buying shipments off other people. So other Colombians and South Americans were having things come in by post, by passengers as well, but they didn't have the wherewithal to extract it. And because we were quite well established by this point, and we had all the chemists, and we knew where to get all the chemicals.
Right.
I'd found chemical companies in Bristol where I could get the chemicals really cheap. We even had a side hustle where we were selling the methanol to other Colombians up in London. I'd get like a 25-gallon drum for say 30 or 40 pounds and sell it for 300 in London.
Wow.
So we had a side hustle in chemicals.
Just selling chemicals.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Because they couldn't get it in London. They didn't know where to go and it was awkward, but we would go in dressed, we would send people in dressed as painters and decorators, or we would we'd like hijack a company's details, change the phone number. We'd have someone sat at the end of a phone just in case because they'd only sell to the trade.
Right.
So we'd make up vans with magnetic signs on the side and, all that sort of stuff.
Wow. Didn't you say that they cracked down on chemical importers and suppliers like that?
In fact, after my case, they cracked down on methanol in Britain.
Okay. So now
but certainly in South America, they've on a lot of the chemicals like hydrochloric acid, ethanol is a big one. It's very difficult to get in South America.
And that's led to the decreased purity of cocaine around the world. Didn't you say that?
I wouldn't say that. Is the cocaine that is made nowadays is not the same quality, doesn't have the same sort of strength and the same psychotropic effect, I suppose you would call it, as the cocaine.
But why though?
Then.
What are the factors?
I think it's because of the different chemicals they're using.
Okay.
And also, I think if they produce a ton of cocaine and they only put 10% cut in it, they make an extra 100 kilos.
Right.
And a 10% cut in a is hardly noticeable, but that's an extra 100 kilos at source. Whether they are or not, I don't know. But I think quite often it's actually coming all the way from source now, already cut.
So they already send it from the source country cut.
I mean, you think, they can make an extra 100 kilos.
Right.
But, they're sending 5 tons at a time, 10 tons. That's an extra ton, maybe.
And everyone down the chain is cutting it. So by the time it gets to the user, it's stepped on more.
Saying that, there is a lot of cocaine coming into Europe. And when there's more cocaine, the level of purity becomes higher.
Oh,
because obviously when there's more, the price goes down.
Yeah,
and the purity
I get that.
level
But
goes
why?
up.
Then why? Okay, so then purity's actually gone up. I don't get what you're saying.
Yeah, purity's gone up.
Oh wow, fascinating.
Purity, but I'm saying the cocaine you could buy nowadays is not the same
thing
as it was then because it's made differently.
Okay. So you guys are now importing exclusively using this method of impregnation.
Yeah. But I could see that we were having problems. Mules were a big X factor, a risk factor.
Yeah. What were the backstories you were giving them?
It was basically the old story that if you got stopped in South America, we used to tell them we would buy you out. We'd do whatever we had to do to bribe you out, get you out, get you a lawyer, get you out, do whatever we had to get you out over there. I didn't want to see anyone go to prison, and we never lost a single mule, not one.
Wow.
The backstory in Britain was slightly different. It was the old time, the standard spiel, somebody asked me to bring this tent back, but with a difference. I would say to them, if you get arrested in Britain, just say, somebody asked me to carry this tent back, but you were really suspicious. So you opened it up, you felt all around it, you couldn't feel any blocks, you couldn't feel any powder.
Right.
And you think how thin these layers were in the ground sheet.
Who could know that?
Yeah,
exactly. Who could suspect was drugs?
And we were very careful about how much contact we had with the mules.
Right.
So there wasn't too much circumstantial evidence to link us to them. So
they just know what they need to know.
Phone calls.
Yeah,
exactly.
And their backstory is backpackers still?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I said, when it comes to court, get your barrister, which is what
that's lawyer.
Yeah, like your top lawyer, to hold up a piece of rubber in front of the jury and say to the jury, would any member of the jury know that this is cocaine?
Yeah.
Every single one of the jury is going to say no.
Yeah.
There's your element of doubt right there. That case is going out the window.
That's brilliant.
And the police knew that this was going to happen.
Right.
So they were waiting. They started trying to find out where the labs were.
Okay.
And this is when the problems really started for us.
How long into doing this process did the cops start to get wind of this cocaine impregnation?
It didn't take very long, because the Colombian and the Chilean, even though we put various ground rules in place. No one should know where the lab was, because it was a weak link in the chain, because it was, the drugs were static.
Yeah.
The liquors were there. Everything was present. And it was just, it was a very weak point in the in the chain as well. So on one occasion, I think it was about 6 months in, I was in Cali, and we were, by this point, we'd already had the conversation about upscaling things. We'd already made quite a lot of money, and we were looking to start doing it by shipping container.
Right.
And that was always the end game.
Yeah.
We'll start bringing it in, camping gear, tents, same premise, same method. But we would just make a lot more tents.
Yeah.
And send it by shipping container. So we were going to do 100 kilos the first one.
Right.
So I was out in Cali. I sent a tent and a mule back from Ecuador. I'd then gone up to Colombia. No, I think 2 tents had gone back. I sent one and then another one. So 2 tents were on the way. The first one had landed. They were processing that in a lab in Crystal Palace, which is an area of London. And they broke the rules, the Colombian and the Chilean. So they were having parties in the lab, doing coke, playing loud music, cars pulling up. They're dealing coke out of the lab, having their friends in there.
Yeah,
dumbasses. What happens? The police raid the lab. They got wind of it. Someone, I don't know, the neighbors probably, suddenly there's all these South Americans. It's obvious what was going on, probably. Instead of keeping a low profile. Yeah. And I said to them, don't go out and start buying expensive cars and doing loads of flash. And they're driving around in Porsches and BMWs, and it's just like, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
Come on, guys. And so they get arrested. There's about 6 people in the lab that shouldn't have been there. Everybody gets arrested.
What did they bust? Did they bust the coke too?
I think they found the precursor chemicals. I think they got 3 kilos. Some had been hidden. We tried to get in there afterwards and get it out, but I don't know what.
Now, what are you doing in Cali?
Yeah, so I'm in Cali when the bust happens.
Right.
So
what are you doing in Cali? Why are you there?
I'm there to upscale.
Okay.
So I'm arranging another 10 to go. And also, I'm there to have the conversation about buying 100 kilos of coke.
Right.
And
who are you dealing with here? This is fascinating.
So yeah, the guy in Cali was married. His niece was married to my partner, the Colombian, in London.
Sure.
So it was like a family contact.
Yep.
So that's how we quite quickly established what had happened. So all the phones went off suddenly in London. Because obviously I'm bringing them from cabinas, telephone boxes in Colombia, not from mobiles, from cabinas, just to say, hi, is everything okay? And they all went off. So I said, look, ring his wife in London, your niece. I'll find out what is going on. So he rings her up, and sure enough, she says, oh, they've all been arrested. They were in a lab having a pie. I was like, oh, for fuck's sake. So I'm now left holding the baby, basically. I'm running the whole operation. And we had put in another rule in place that if if any of us got arrested, whoever was left outside had to look after the people that had been arrested, pay the bills of the family. So that's what I started doing. You know, I was paying all their rent, their utilities, their grocery bills, everything. You know, for all of the, both the guys' families that were in prison. But going back to being in Cali. So the guy in Cali panics, puts me in a hotel because I was staying in his flat. So he panics and goes, we've got to be really careful. But by this point, I'd already had the conversation with him about, buying 100 kilos. I'd gone to inspect the cocaine in Buenaventura, which is a port city in Colombia, really dangerous.
Super dangerous.
Yeah. So on that, it's quite an interesting story. On that day, we traveled out of Cali in like a 4-wheel drive Frontera, and we'd gone to a funeral of I think it was the guy's nanny for his kids or something. Her husband had died. Anyway, we'd gone right up into the mountains into FARC territory, and he had clearance to go into FARC territory. Now me, I'm a gringo basically. And he said, don't worry, you're with me. So we driven all the way up into this beautiful village up in the mountains. And it was amazing. Took loads of photographs. There's this whitewashed church up on the hill at the end of the high street of this village. And as we arrived, we're literally the only vehicle in the whole village. And the whole funeral procession is coming up the high street of the village towards the church. And he said, stay in the car. Don't get out of the car. I'm going to go into the church and deal with the funeral, and I'll be back out. And as we arrived, and the coffin's been carried up the high street, a foal broke loose.
What?
A baby horse, a foal.
Oh, okay.
And it was almost like the spirit of the guy that had died, because the foal came charging up the high street through all the mourners. And it was almost like his spirit had broken free and was coming through the mourners. It was really weird. And so I'm waiting in the car, and he comes back after the funeral, and his family had a finca out down in the foothills. So we drive down to the finca, go and visit his family, and I saw a coral, the coral snakes, the really dangerous ones. Yeah. Dead one there, and he showed me that anyway. And we have some food. And then we go to Buenaventura to where they've got a safe house with 100 kilos of coke. Okay. And I get there, and the guys there in the safe house are really paranoid. There's a gun on the table straight away, and they're having a really heated conversation with my guy. And they keep looking at me saying Policia, MI5. And I'm thinking, hold on a minute. They think I'm British police or MI5. And I'm thinking any minute now, I'm going to get shot because it's getting really heated. And my guy's trying to calm it down. And I said, and my Spanish was really basic at this point. And I said, no, I'm not not police, criminal. And I said, I've just come out of prison. I was in Parkhurst. And as soon as I said this, one of the guys that's going mad started speaking English. And he said, I was in prison in a prison that's just across the English Channel in a place called Wayland or Portland. Wow. Which it's literally just across from Parkhurst, but across the sea. And he had been in there at the same time as the guy, another coincidence, that I'd done the importation of ecstasy with when I was at university. He was in the same prison and knew him. Wow. No. He said to me, and he starts pulling out photographs, and obviously the vibe completely calmed down. Right. And he realised that I was genuine because I'd been in Parkhurst and he'd been in the English prisons, and he spoke fluent English. Wow! So it was all happy days then.
I don't know why you would be sent to do this. Why would if you're working with a Colombian? Why wouldn't he just go back and arrange these shipments out to Britain? Why would they send you?
Because because they were dealing with the stuff back in London.
Right. So their function, they were the best at diluting
because they were doing the
turning it out of the rubber, extracting out of the rubber.
And I kind of enjoyed going out to South America. And I had just sent a passenger back. I see. So what I would do is I would go out to South America and I would make sure that the passengers had got on the plane.
Right. You wouldn't just send them out there alone. You would make sure that they were all taken care of.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So it would take the pressure off the passenger, and I would meet the Colombian from Cali. I would get the tent.
Right.
I would then make sure the passenger was seen onto the plane and make sure they went off.
Makes
safe,
sense. Makes sense. Calm them down. Show them the ropes.
Exactly.
Great.
That
makes sense.
Keep
that
it
makes
all
sense.
chill and all the rest of it.
So was the plan to dilute the 100 keys and impregnate them into a bunch of tents? What was the plan?
How do you mean dilute it?
Impregnate it into tents. Like, how are we going to get 100 keys onto a ship and to
right.
Britain?
I see what you mean. Yeah, we'd have put like 3 or 5 kilos in each tent.
Right.
And then sent, I don't know, 500 to, I don't know how many tents went in a 40-foot container, but they wouldn't have all had cocaine in.
Right.
Only like 2 or 3 boxfuls of tents would have had the cocaine in.
Right.
It wouldn't have been the whole ship.
Okay.
So we would have done 100, and then we'd have, with the money from that, we would have done probably 250, 500, then a ton.
Okay.
And before you know it, we were 3 steps away from doing a ton.
Right. Okay.
And that was the direction it was going in. And they f***ed it up. And the Colombian got put under pressure whilst he was in prison and became a police informant. Obviously, I found this out later.
Okay. So what happened?
So he gets released after 6 months. And people are telling me, watch it. We think he's an informant. But he came out and he said, he did have a reasonable excuse for getting released early because there were so many people got arrested in the lab. He said, well, they didn't find me with anything. The other guys, the Chileans, taking the fall. All these other people were in there. I didn't have any drugs on me. So they've got no evidence on me. Okay. And it kind of made sense. And I was like, But the Chilean's girlfriend was calling me saying, watch him. He's definitely an informant. He's been flipped. And yeah, sure enough, the police had put loads of pressure on his family. But the day he got out, well, not the day he got out, but a couple of days after he got released, I went down to London from Gloucestershire by train. Oh, no, I drove down, sorry, with about £35,000 in cash. His part of the profits whilst he'd been in prison, because things had carried on and I'd carried on doing things whilst he was in prison. And I said, welcome back. There's 35 grand in cash to get you started.
So whilst he's still locked up, do you move this 100-kilo load through?
No. So because of them getting arrested, the guy in Cali gets really paranoid. Yeah. So we kind of shut operations down initially. Okay. Then I fly back to Britain. I don't get arrested because I thought I was going to get arrested as well. I stayed in Colombia for a while. I fly back to Britain wholly thinking I'm going to get arrested. I get back, I'm not. But I start to realize that I'm under surveillance. Start to see funny things going on. Cutting a long story short, I find out for sure that I'm under surveillance via a corrupt police officer. I didn't have direct contact with him, but a corrupt police officer in the Metropolitan Police in London. I had a third party in between who had contact with him. Anyway, he told me there was a massive operation around me.
And you've halted imports at this time?
No.
Are you still you still have mules coming
I've still
across?
got mules coming in. I'm buying other people's shipments, right? Extracting them. So I'd buy other people's shipments for like half the price, because they just wanted the cash. So I'd buy it at a really cheap price, extract it, cut it, and make loads of money on that as well.
How many keys were you extracting like every month?
I don't know.
Like how many runs?
Well, we were trying to do at least 1 or 2 a month.
Yeah, plus other people's.
So plus I don't really want to say because they ultimately charged me with 80 kilos. But the judge in his summing up said that we know that we were responsible for bringing in at least 80 kilos, but they know it was a lot more, but they just can't prove it. Okay. And it was a lot more.
All right.
I'm not going to say exactly how. All right. But it was a lot.
Was it 1,000? You think you brought in a ton doing this method?
No, not as much as that, but it was
in the hundreds for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And they were building a case this whole time, or trying to build a case.
Yeah. So
I see.
They started a big operation. Excuse me. So heavy surveillance around me. Started seeing, the same faces, cars, started picking up on it. And like I said, I got told I was under surveillance.
Yeah.
So, being so careful, not talking on the phones, all face-to-face meetings, not talking in any enclosed environment. We were not talking cars. We would turn the phones off, leave them at home, get out of the car, walk into a field out in the countryside just to have a conversation. I remember in 1 year, I took like 42 flights back and forth to South America, around in Europe.
Yeah.
Just to have conversations with people.
Wow.
But I just having to be super careful because I knew I was under surveillance.
Yeah.
It became a proper cat and mouse game.
Yeah.
But equally, I knew I was. So I thought, I'm just going to carry this on for as long as I can, make as much money as I can, and get the hell out of it if I can. And it got to the point where they raided a lab in Edinburgh. The informant managed to find out, the Colombian managed to find out that me and the other Colombian, the chemist that I'd started working with, were doing something up in Edinburgh because this chemist, I don't know what he'd said to him, but he must have said something because they were still friends, even though he knew he was an informant. And he had been followed up to Edinburgh by the police. And they mounted a surveillance operation on our lab in Edinburgh. And I spotted this. First of all, the Colombians spotted the surveillance. I went back and checked. And I said, yeah, that's definitely the police. I said, I'll get you out of here now. I said, we have to leave all the drugs, leave everything, and let's just go now. And they were like, and the Colombians were like, we're not sure. We don't want to lose the drugs. And I said, well, I'm gone. You can stay, but I'm getting the fuck out of here. And I left. I went to a hotel. Next morning, the police had gone. A friend, basically the flat belonged to a friend of mine, my contact in Edinburgh. So next morning, I quite quickly found out that the place had been raided. It was headline news on Radio 1, 2, 3, and 4, the BBC News World. I mean, it was massive news in Scotland. It was the first of its kind in Scotland.
Yeah.
They said massive crack cocaine laboratory found in Edinburgh. I mean, it was, it was
you don't see a lot of that in Edinburgh.
Yeah,
right.
They've arrested Colombians there.
Right.
It was like, there was chemicals, the press. I mean, it was a big deal. And they narrowly missed me because I parked my van outside, so it looked as though I was in there.
Yeah.
But I wasn't. But I knew that my time was up. And I knew my fingerprints were all over the flat, and I was done for basically.
Right. Had you been stashing your money? Were you burying your money or hiding it as opposed to buying stocks?
I've been burying cocaine in barrels and stuff like that, and burying money. But I'd been buying stocks and shares and stuff as well, because stocks and shares are a great way of laundering money. Still now.
Right. Well, I don't know. I just asked because they froze your stocks the first time you got busted.
Well, they didn't. They got some, but they didn't.
Okay.
Yeah, because I had all the paperwork hidden.
Okay. All right.
So I know the game's up for me, but I know that it's going to take them a while to get the forensic evidence back, and the fingerprints, blah blah blah. So I get out of Scotland pretty quick. I get back down to England, and I go back to my dad's place, and I said, look, because he'd seen it on the news as well. I had friends ringing me up from Glastonbury Festival. It must have happened around June. So I've had friends from Glastonbury at the festival ringing me up going, is this anything to do with you? And I was like, no. As if I'm going to say yes. I was like, no, go away. So I get back home, and my dad was like, because he rang me up on the way down, and he said, are you all right? And I was like, yeah. And it was I knew that he knew. So I get back down, and I called him out of the house, and I said, leave your phone in the house, Dad. I got him out on the porch, and I said, look, that was something to do with me. I've got to leave the country. We had a house in France. I said, look, can I go there? And he said, yeah, sure. Just get out of Britain, because he didn't want to see me go to prison. I had a friend who was in the Turkish mafia, so phoned him up. He lived in Swindon, quite close to where I lived. And I said, look, Oscar, can you get me out of Britain? because he was smuggling cigarettes into Britain and all sorts of
Right. People.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
And, you know, at that time, they didn't search cars going out of Britain.
Sure.
They weren't looking for people going out.
Yeah.
So it was easy peasy. So he said, yeah, just jump in the boot of my car. And it was a Mercedes. He said, just jump in the boot at Dover.
Yeah.
We'll go on the hover speed, which is like 45 minutes. And
it's like a ferry.
Yeah, ferry. So drove down to Dover. You know, I said goodbye to my dad. Said goodbye to my mum. And that was the last time I saw my mum ever. She died whilst I was in prison in Ecuador. But we'll come on to that. So
had your mom recovered psychologically from the first time you went to prison?
She was still drinking heavily and having psychotic episodes. And it was just going downhill and getting worse. But yeah.
Okay, so you get smuggled into France.
Yeah, so I get smuggled out of Britain into France, and I'm on the run basically. And go and hide out at my dad's place down in France. Didn't tell anyone where I was. I'm still ringing the informant, giving him misinformation. And I decided to do one last job with him, but I wasn't going to pay him. I was going to rob the money off him. So I had somebody ready, a mule, to come out to South America. And it was literally going to be the last job.
Sure.
Because after that, I was going to Thailand. Because, you know, I knew the British police were coming for me. And I knew they were going to find me in France eventually.
Right.
And friends of mine were going, look, just come out and stay with us here in Thailand. We've got really beautiful villas out there.
Yeah, get a sex change. No big deal.
See Gary Glitter.
Yeah.
But... they said, just come out here, just, you know, lay low for a while. And, you know, they were involved in exporting hash and stuff.
Right.
And, you know.
You would have got into something down there.
Yeah, exactly. They said, come and see what we can do out of here, you know.
Okay.
Blah, blah. But just be cool. So I said to the informant, I'll go out to Ecuador, do this one last job. And he must have got the sense that it was the last opportunity, or the British police certainly got wind of the fact that this was their last opportunity to get me.
I see.
So I fly out to Ecuador, and again, cutting a long story short, I meet the guy from Cali. I get the tent. The mule was on the way, hadn't arrived, and they take me down. They arrest me in the penthouse of a hotel.
Wow.
In Quito.
It was at Interpol?
Yeah, it was Interpol.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they raid the hotel and they arrest me. My girlfriend's with me out there because I hadn't seen her for ages. So I flew her out to spend 2 weeks with me.
This poor girl.
I know. First time in South America, she was only there 4 hours. She gets arrested.
Oh, Jesus. You know, she was getting hit on by a doctor back home. She was like, well... we give Pete one last chance to change, to change his ways.
Honestly, we only just got back together as well.
Oh God!
And,
women are right to hate us.
She ended up getting 13 years in prison in Britain. The British police fabricated evidence against her.
Oh, I would have told you so quick.
They said that every time that it was the same girl from Bristol.
Yeah.
And I'd sent her and her daughter, because obviously I was making a lot of money. Yeah. Even when I split up from her, you know, obviously I still stayed in touch with her. And I'd sent, you know, she'd come out to Holland with me on holidays just to see Amsterdam.
Right.
And I'd sent her and her daughter out to the Dominican Republic just for a holiday. On, you know, just them and her and her daughter on their own, just
without
a break.
You. Yeah.
And the only evidence the police had in court against her was that they found trace elements of cocaine on the luggage. There was cocaine everywhere. We were using cocaine.
Right.
And, you know, and one receipt for chemicals where I'd asked her to buy some methanol for me.
Right.
And she didn't know what it was for. That was the only, her legal team must have been.
Right.
And the British police said that every time she'd been out the country with me or on holiday, she'd carried drugs back for me. Why would I use my girlfriend to do that when I had loads of mules?
Oh,
not once. And I can say for a fact, hand on heart, hand on the Bible, hand on whatever you want me to put it on. Apart from your...
Yes. Well, yeah, obviously. You wouldn't mind.
She did not ever carry drugs for me.
Yeah.
Ever.
Wow. And they roped her into the conspiracy.
Yeah.
That's the brutality of, because that's like a DEA level American brutality.
Well, that's what they would do here in Britain. If they can't
Wow.
get you, and because I was arrested in Ecuador and they couldn't really get their hands on me, they arrested her there as well. But I got her out of prison. I bribed the judges there.
Okay.
I got her out and I said, do not go back to Britain. And what did she do? I had a flat arranged for her in Barcelona, in Spain. I said, go to Spain, stay with some friends there, and just wait. I'll get your daughter brought out to Spain so she's with you.
Yeah.
And just let the case go run its course in Britain, and see what happens. But do not go back to Britain because they'll arrest you. And she said, well, why would they? I'm nothing to do with it. I've not done anything wrong. I've got a young daughter there. I'm a single mum. I've not done anything wrong.
Yeah.
And I said, trust me, they will arrest you.
Wow.
And what happened? They did. She got 13 years.
Wow. How many years did she do?
7.
Oh, that's terrible. Did she
I
appeal it? Did she try to?
I don't know, because her legal team said obviously not to have any contact with me. I'd offered to write any statements they wanted, vindicating, you know, saying that she was nothing to do with it. That they never contacted me.
That's terrible.
I mean, honestly, I feel terrible about it.
Yeah.
I've only ever seen her once since.
Yeah.
Bumped into her and she said hi, and that was it. But you imagine 7 years in prison for nothing.
Yeah.
For something you really genuinely didn't do.
Right. Did she have the opportunity to cooperate and inform on you and do all that?
Well, there was nothing to inform on. I mean, the police knew everything.
And but she didn't even, was she even aware of your operations?
No, she knew.
Wow.
She knew I was involved in some sort of drug dealing, but she didn't know the level at all.
And the methods you were using, I'm sure.
At all, nothing.
Wow. That is crazy. That's even more totalitarian than something that would happen in America.
And it's still happening to people here in this country.
That's crazy.
People think Britain, it doesn't happen in Britain. I mean, it's just, there's innocent people in prison in this country, I can tell you now.
Absolutely. I mean, in America too, but like the way that, way that even though you guys invented common law and the burden of proof, this burden of proof is on the government to show your guilt. It seems like here, just from people we've talked to and stories we've heard, they're able to circumvent that
they just fabricated
more liberally here. Yeah, it seems like it's much more corrupt here than it is in the United States.
They just said it was, literally, they had nothing on it, no cocaine, not even a gram.
Did she have a jury trial?
Yeah. She went to trial, jury trial. She didn't even have a gram, not even a microgram.
Wow.
They literally trace elements of cocaine on the baggage.
So what were they accusing her of?
Conspiracy.
Okay, so this is a conspiracy case, clearly. So you're the head of this conspiracy, and the Colombians are part of it, and the Chilean is part of it.
And they arrested one of the guys that they said was like my right hand man. He's dead now. 6 people ended up dead in that case.
Wow. How? Murdered?
Murdered because of being informants. 2 ended up dead in Colombia. 1 with a note. In fact, one of the Colombians that was in the lab in Edinburgh, because there was a girl and a guy. The girl ended up dead in Colombia with a note pinned to her chest saying that she was an informant.
Wow.
So 6 others ended up dead in.
And I assume the main informant, the guy your former partner,
he's still breathing.
You're kidding.
As far as I'm aware.
So he went on the run?
The British police came over to Ecuador when I was in prison there, and they sat across the table from me, and they said, if he ends up dead, because they knew I wanted to kill him, they said, you'll be the first person we come and arrest. And I said, I'm not being funny. The amount of people, because he informed on a lot of people.
Sure.
And in open court at Bristol, because I had people in the gallery watching the case, and I had a lawyer in Britain representing me, and they wouldn't even give me the case papers, even though I was named on every page.
Wow.
The Crown Prosecution Service here would not release the evidence to me because they knew I was going to try and derail the case.
Right.
And the judge, when it came to sentencing, read out a list of people that this Colombian had put in prison. And my friends in the gallery that were watching said they'd never seen that before in the court of law.
So the guy had enemies all over the place.
Yeah. So I said to the British police, I'm not being funny, but that guy's going to end up dead one day, sooner or later. I'm not saying I'm going to kill him, but someone will. And they were like, And they didn't know what to say to that.
So who was killing? Who do you think was behind all of the other witness killings? Do you think it was his Colombian family in Cali that was sending people?
Yeah, people. When something like that goes down, there's a cleanup operation happens. People get killed.
Right. Because these informants were telling on everybody. It sounds like.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, the three of them were in Britain.
Right. Were they British or were they Colombians in Britain?
Three were Brits. Yeah, three. No, they were all Brit.
Damn. Do you want to repeat that? Cat got your tongue.
They were all British English. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. And they got hit. Did anybody ever go?
They're dead anyway.
Did anybody get arrested for these hits?
I'm not aware of anyone getting arrested.
Okay. So now you're in Ecuador. Your girlfriend gets arrested. You're arrested. They separate you guys.
Yeah.
Why did the Ecuadorians not give you over to the British?
They did talk about extradition back to Britain.
Because I'm mad. The Brits wanted you so bad.
Yeah, the Brits were there in the background somewhere, because I tried to straight away in that hotel room. I tried to bribe the Ecuadorian police because I knew how corrupt they were.
Right.
I had $25,000 or euros on me in cash, and I said to them, "Look, I'll give you 25,000 euros now."
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Give me a telephone, and I'll get you whatever money you want to pay off your whole team. You keep the bag, and you can have that.
Yep.
And just pretend you didn't find it." And one of them said him, and I laughed at him. He said, "Oh, what do you think we are corrupt with the Ecuadorian police force?" I said, "You are having a laugh, aren't you?"
Yeah.
I said, "You are taking the piss." I said,
Yeah.
Really? Come on, boys.
It's like a stripper saying, "What am I? What am I to you? A slut?"
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
The Colombian who I'd just given a bag of money to,
right?
When I eventually got the case papers in Ecuador, they lost him in traffic. Yeah, right. They stopped him. They took the money off him, and they said, "Yeah, on your way."
He got away.
Yeah, of course they did. They took the money off him. And
they lost
him in traffic.
Yeah, but you're a gringo, so I think they automatically don't like us.
And the British police were there in the back. Well, I don't know for sure, but I'm assuming the British police were there.
Well, that's how they got tipped off, was Interpol. So now they have higher level people that are coordinating it.
Exactly. So if it hadn't have been for that, the Ecuadorians would have definitely taken.
How much cash did you have at your disposal? Able to
quite a lot.
You think you had millions?
No, not millions.
But did you have money over there that you were able to access?
I had that on me, but I didn't have money in Ecuador that I could access. But I could have got it there pretty quick.
So how did you pay off the judge to get your girlfriend?
Yeah, I had money transferred out there. And
so you paid him to basically drop the charges against her or let her get out?
Yeah. Basically, I mean, the Ecuadorian law is pretty much who you know and how much you can pay.
Right. So why couldn't you pay your?
I did. I started paying off as well. I spent about £125,000 on lawyers and bribes and stuff like that.
Right. And you still couldn't buy your way out.
I got it. Well, they wanted to give me 25 years, which was the maximum, and at that time there was no remission. At the time, Oscar was in prison there.
Yeah, there's no bail
in Quito. Yeah, there was no bail. There was no remission. There was no early release. There was no time off for good behavior.
Yeah,
it was like, I think they were giving you a month off every year. So I calculated I would have done 23 out of 25. Yeah. And when I saw that document, I tell you what, I remember I nearly passed out.
Yeah.
Because 25 years in prison, I remember an Ecuadorian prisoner saying to me, if you spend any longer than 5 years in an Ecuadorian prison, you're either going to end up dead, ill, or crazy.
Yeah.
And I certainly ended up ill. Some people say I'm crazy. I'm not.
Right.
Well, let me a little bit.
Or you're gonna overdose. You know, you're gonna get on drugs.
Yeah. I mean,
which will kill you because you'll get into debt. Yeah. You can't survive 25 in an Ecuadorian prison.
Well, no, he said over 5.
Yeah. Wow.
25 is like, forget it. Yeah.
So,
as you say, forget it.
Yeah. So, but you got your girlfriend out. How long did she spend in jail before she got out?
About 3 months and three or 4 months. Three, I think it was.
And how much did you have to pay?
25,000. Got her out.
Okay.
And the condition was that I took the rap. I mean, I was anyway.
Yeah. So what did they have as far as evidence?
Well, they seized the tent that I was going to send back with the mule that I was
5
waiting
keys?
for. No, it wasn't. It was only small. It was just 2
Okay.
in this one. But I was just going to send it back with the mule, and the Colombian wasn't going to get paid. So I was then going to, my plan had been see my girlfriend for 2 weeks. She was going to go back to Britain. Obviously, the mule was going to go back to Britain. I was then going to go back to France, get literally a change of clothes, go to Thailand and spend 6 months in Thailand. The money would be transferred there. And I was just going to stay there 6 months and let the heat cool down.
Okay. So then, so that didn't happen. What evidence do they have? Did the mule snitch on you? Did they get the mule?
No, they didn't arrive. They hadn't arrived.
Okay.
So they never turned up.
So they got away.
They never turned up because they never set off.
They never showed up, or they just never got the bag.
They never set off because I didn't give them the green light to leave.
I see. Okay.
Okay.
So what evidence did they have?
So they had the tent,
right?
With, but the problem was they didn't extract. Even though I said to my lawyer, "Isn't it surely it's better to extract the cocaine so it's less volume?" And she said, "It doesn't matter whether it's 1 kilo or 100 in Ecuador. You're going to get 8 years or 12. It's weird sentences there. You either get 8, 12, or 16 or 25. There's nothing like in betweens,
right?
Unless you're an informant, you might get 4,
depending on the weight, obviously.
Yeah."
Okay.
So she said, "You'll get 8 years. We'll put you down as a mule." And they weighed the whole tent because it was impregnated. So it was lucky it wasn't the first one because it would have been about 40. So they weighed it. They put poles, pegs, everything. So it was like
throw a little baby in there.
Yeah. So it was like 7 kilos or 7.7 kilos.
Did you tell them there's only 2 in there?
No, I told my lawyer, I said, "Look, surely it's better." And I tell you what, if I'd have extracted it, it would have been slightly under 2 because obviously the process, you lose some of it. When Rafael Correa got sworn in as president, there was an indulto, like a presidential pardon of anyone with under 2 kilos. And I would have gone free, but they would, obviously the British police would have made sure that I got arrested.
Oh, well.
Because when they flew out to tell me about if the Colombian turned up dead, they also said, if you serve less than 6 years in prison or are sentenced to less than 10 years, we will extradite you at the end of your sentence here.
Yeah.
Because I think they thought I'd end up dead in prison there.
Right.
I think that's what they really thought, for sure. So they were going to extradite me at the end and re-sentence me in Britain to at least 25 years.
Oh my God.
And up. I'd have probably got like 30.
So it was actually better for you to do more time in Ecuador.
I was quite happy about the fact I got arrested in Ecuador because I knew I'd be able to get out there earlier than I would in Britain, because in Britain I'd have been maximum security all the way through.
Yeah.
No way of escape. I knew in Ecuador, if I couldn't bribe them, I'd be able to escape.
Yeah.
Or get out early, or there was going to be some way of getting out.
There's some wiggle room if you can survive the initial years.
I only thought I was going to be in there 6 months. Do you know what I mean?
But hang on, so you copped out to 7 kilos weight-wise, which is a 25-year sentence.
No. That would have been like 8 years.
So how'd you end up getting 25?
I didn't get 25. So I started bribing the judges.
Okay.
And I actually had to say to the judges, don't give me less than 10 years.
Wow.
Because if you do, the British police will, they're going to fuck me up.
And are you paying them through your lawyer?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
So they gave me 12.
Okay.
The plan was then to wait for the heat to die down and the British police sort of forget about me and move on to whatever they were doing next. And then lodge an appeal, get it down to 6, do half of 6 and get out after 3.
Nice.
That was the plan. And it just didn't happen.
Okay.
Because I tried to escape out of prison in Quito and that kind of thing.
Man makes plans, God laughs. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so let's get into it. So how long does it take you to get all that adjudicated and get your sentence? Get your 12 years?
It was much quicker than Britain.
Sure, I bet. Money moves things down there.
Yeah, so it was probably about 6 months and it was all done.
Okay.
And then... Because I could see things was kind of not really going in the direction that I wanted them to, and time was going by, and it was just, and then, I'd had this visit from them there, and they said, if you do less than 10 and blah, 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 and all this. So I knew I was stuck there for a while. So I started, I'd become friends with some ex-FARC guys in there, some Colombians.
Yeah, the guerrillas.
Yeah. And they said, look, we can get somebody down here with an RPG, like we talked about earlier, to blow the wall of the exercise yard on B-Wing in the prison in Quito and have a mass escape. And
Just run for it.
Yeah. Because, you could sort of move around the prison. As Oscar probably told you, in Quito, in the daytime, you can move between wings.
Yeah.
And B-Wing had a large exercise yard. And it was only one concrete block thick, the wall. And there were a couple of gun turrets around it, and that was it. It was really pretty lax security.
Wow.
We talked about a helicopter lift off the roof, but that was like $100,000, and I thought,
yeah.
And then we settled on digging a tunnel because loads of people have escaped out of Quito by digging tunnels out there.
And what is the name of this Quito prison?
Garcia Moreno.
Which I think is closed down now. Right. But it's a super old prison.
Yeah. They actually filmed because I was in an episode of Banged Up Abroad that went out in America on Nat Geo. It's still on there. And I was the pilot episode in America. Which was the first time they've ever done that with a Brit because the episode was that good apparently.
Wow.
So they actually, when they found out because I told them the prison in Quito is closed, you can go and film there. They were like,
yeah.
So they flew out to Ecuador and filmed in the prison in Ecuador and did a reenactment of a gunfight that I was in. And
you were in a gunfight there. Okay, let's get to it.
Yeah.
So they wanted there's all these escape methods. You decide on a tunnel.
So we buy a cell on B-Wing. Like I said, the outside wall was the end of B-Wing. So we bought the penultimate cell on the right-hand side of B-Wing and started digging a tunnel out of there. And because of the way the prison was, you could have anything brought in, and you could get building materials in there. Right. I bought a cell, I had it retiled, rewired. You could have a TV in there, fridge, cable TV.
It's quite posh.
Yeah, it's Posh Pete.
Posh Pete.
Posh Pete's pal. And so it was you could even have power tools in there for sake.
Yeah.
So so
it's a little city.
Yeah,
these prisons in South America are societies in themselves.
That was exactly the way I described it. It's like an enclosed town. There were shops in there, restaurants, hardware store,
major drug trafficking.
Yeah,
totally.
So we buy the cell, we crack open the floor, we make a cap for it out of concrete, and a lid, and we get people to start digging a tunnel, and they just dug out underneath, and they followed the line of the exercise yard with the concrete out in the direction to reach the external wall and then under the wall. Yeah. And we were getting close to the wall.
Where were you guys putting the dirt that you were excavating?
I don't know. They were just getting rid of it and just down the toilet, I don't know, in the bins.
Right. Who were you paying? How many people were you paying to do this, and how much did it cost?
I can't remember now. We had a few people doing it.
Right.
But because we were going to take out as many people as we could.
Yeah.
Because, I thought, why not? If we dig a tunnel, let's get, like the Great Escape.
Right. Sure. Exactly.
That's the vision I had.
Yeah.
The Great Escape. And then I was going to try and go into Brazil and down the Amazon. And
did you have that as a plan?
That's kind of what I had in my head. Because, I knew I had to get out of Ecuador.
And did you realize that you couldn't go back to Britain?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were mentally prepared to never see jolly old again.
Yeah, which is difficult.
Yeah. Okay. So go on.
So anyway, the plans get rumbled. I don't know. Someone spoke to someone, and someone spoke to someone else, and the guards found out that I was trying to escape. And they even came and sat down with me and said, "And how much do you want to pay us to let you out?" And I was like, Because there were people paying guards off, corrupt groups guards, and they would literally give you a uniform, and on a night shift they would take you out the front door for $60,000 and stuff like that. So
why didn't you take them up on it?
Well, I was thinking about it, but anyway.
You didn't want to pay $60,000?
Well, no, I was thinking about it, but I don't know whether these guards were sent to test the water,
right?
Or
maybe they take your money and then as you're escaping, they shoot you in the back.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's hard to trust them.
There was a lot of risk.
Totally.
And anyway, it all gets up and rumbled, and on a visit day one day, a guard turns up with a pole with a piece of wood and says, "Come with me to the head guard's office, head here." And I didn't know what was going on. So I get down there and he says, "Oh, you've been transferred." And I said, "What do you mean been transferred?" You know, I sort of settled into the fact I was doing my time in Quito, in Garcia Moreno. I'd bought a load of cells, made my cell all nice. You know, I was having a good time. I had a really nice girlfriend and all sorts of.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah. And life was good in prison.
Yeah.
And suddenly I'm getting transferred, and I didn't realise, but all of the Colombians involved were getting transferred to different prisons all around the country as well. They were splitting us up.
Yeah.
And I got sent to Guayaquil, which at the time was the third most dangerous prison in the whole of South America.
Tell us about it.
It quite quickly became the first or the most dangerous prison in the whole of South America. And I think it's still pretty much well up there.
Okay. Tell us what was going on there.
Holy shit. Because I'd seen like on the news gunfights between the police and inmates, and pictures of the police dropping bombs out of helicopters onto the prison, and I mean just anarchy. And I was like, I know that prison is like really dangerous, and any foreigner going down there gets extorted. So I hit panic button, and I got a Colombian friend of mine who was really well contacted out there, who ran the bakery on the wing that I was on. And I got a message to him, and he managed to get down to see me because, you know, he's friends with all the guards. So he got down to see me before I left, and I said, look, phone up one of the head bosses down in Guayaquil, a guy called Coyote, who's now dead. But he had been in Quito for 6 months on a punishment lie down. They'd brought him up there, for 6 months to punish him. And I'd met him once to talk about trafficking. And I said, look, ring him up and try and make sure I don't get extorted when I get down to Guayaquil or tortured or whatever. And because I didn't really know what was going on, I was getting told all sorts of different things that I was getting transferred. But anyway, I get transferred down there, and on the second day, a reception group of about 50 inmates, gang members, come walking out the front gate of the prison to the where the wings are, across a dirt road, which was like the inner perimeter, to the outer perimeter where the director's office was, where there was like a little holding cell, which I was in. And they said, are you the English guy from Quito? And I thought, this is going to go one or two ways. Either I'm going to get extorted to killed, or my friend has managed to get through to them and I'm going to be all right. And they said, oh, your friend's on the phone. And they handed me and they all had mobile phones, guns on them, all brand new sports gear on. And the guards just opened the gate and let them walk out, 50 of them.
It's like it's the streets.
Yeah.
Were you terrified?
Yeah. I was bricking it. Do you know what I mean? I thought,
You're bricking it? You were erection?
No.
Okay.
No, bricking it in Britain.
Yeah.
No, I was far from excited. not at all ecstatic.
Holy this is what I've been waiting. This is my kink.
Yeah. I'm getting off on
50 Ecuadorian gangbangers come to kill me. I'm about to blow my
No.
Had part of you accepted, because you'd been in prison long enough to know how easily people get killed on a daily basis?
Yeah. I mean, on my second day in prison in Quito, an English guy had taken me over to the B wing to meet one of the gang members there. 2 hours later, he'd been strung up, shot and stabbed, and they'd made it look like a suicide, and the guards wrote it down as suicide. Oh my God. And my mate took me and said, look up that window. You know that guy we just saw 2 hours ago? That's him. He's dead. Wow. And I was like...
Were foreigners getting killed as well? Or was that mostly amongst the gangs?
In Quito, no, not really. Quito wasn't so bad for gangs. It was pretty chill.
Okay, so was it kind of like just the way that foreigners, it's kind of taboo to kill them because in South America, because the heat comes down? Was that the same rule in prison? Or
not so much. No, not really.
So how do you think
in Guayaquil, they had like pretty much a meat market down there. As soon as a foreigner arrived, what would happen is because all the guards were paid off and the director of the prison was paid by the gangs in there, and the gangs were so powerful they ran everything in there. There were two gangs at war with each other, the Cubanos at this time and Los Rusos. The prison was 8,000 prisoners, 24 wings, absolutely massive. And the wings were like this. They were parallel to each other, one wing in front of the other, and then a long corridor, say a kilometer long, running down the middle. And about halfway down, there was a border, and you couldn't cross it because that was enemy territory. That was the other gang, and I was one side. So I ended up on the Cubano side of it. Okay. Three brothers, nicknamed Los Cubanos.
Right.
There was a third gang came in later, the Choneros, who ended up on the wing that I was on. A guy called Rasquina, nicknamed Rasquina, who I became quite friendly with. He's now dead. And I'm still very friendly with his brother, Carlos Zambrano. Hi, Carlos.
Okay, so if you were if you stayed on your side, you weren't going to get killed within your own gang.
No, but if you strayed on to the other one and then came back, they would torture you to find out if you'd been sent back to kill, like as an informant or as a hitman or whatever.
Okay.
But on this second day, when they came out, they handed me this phone. They said, "This is your friend in Quito." They put me on the phone, and it wasn't my friend at all. It was the Syrian guy that was running the wing in Quito, who I'd kind of started butting heads with because I was starting to take the wing over and run things on that wing because it was kind of for foreigners. Drugs, buying the cells. I owned like 5 cells. I was renting them out, running some drugs on there. I started a gang called the Euro Banda. Banda in Spanish, it means gang. So as a joke, I formed up a gang. So I thought, everybody else has got a gang. Why shouldn't we? So I'd like a load of Russians, Lithuanians, some Brits, and we called ourselves Euro Banda. It was a bit of a joke.
Nice, I like it.
But I teamed up with that bunch of Colombians on D-Wing who I tried to escape with.
I see.
So we had a gun. We had, we were tooled up and stuff.
Right. Okay.
Anyway, different story in Guayaquil completely.
Right.
So anyway, they put me on the phone. It was this Syrian guy, and I'd been told that I'd been transferred down there so he could take all those cells off me because each cell was worth like about $3 or $4 grand. They all had TVs, fridges in, beds. And anyway, I didn't really know what was going on. And I said, "You're not my friend. I don't want to talk to you." Anyway, luckily for me, my Colombian friend had managed to get through to Coyote, this boss.
Who ran the Cubanos?
Yeah, who was like joint with the Cubanos. And he'd put in a good word for me. So I got taken to like this good wing, put in with one of the bosses of the drugs on that wing, who ran, he was basically the boss for all what they call polvo over there, which is like it's a byproduct of the cocaine process, which they smoke.
Base.
Yeah, it is, but it isn't. It's a bit like base. Base. Base.
Polvo means dust.
Yeah, I know,
so
but
it's the extracts, right?
Yeah,
it's all the stuff that falls down, the chemicals
it's all that horrible stinking. It smells really bad.
Of course,
yeah. So they put me in the cell with the boss for the whole of that side of the prison, and he had a rucksack full of this shit in there and a handgun. And I'm like, I don't want to be in this cell because if the police turn up, I'm probably going to get as well.
Right.
Yeah, So after a little while, just to grease the wheels, because they didn't extort me, because they knew I had contacts and whatnot, and I'd been in Quito 2 years. So I was really lucky. Because any other foreigners, what they would do is, like I said, that if a foreigner arrived, the guard would come in, he would tell the boss of the gang, and they would have like an auction, and whoever, they'd have so the Cubanos were 3 brothers, and on each wing they had a boss on each wing. So it was like a pyramid, proper mafia structure. So they had a boss on each wing that ran each wing, that reported to them, that collected all the money off of everybody on the wing, that paid tribute up to them. They had a boss, for each drug. So a boss of the coke, a boss of the base, a boss of the weed. That was the three drugs you could get there. And a boss of the alcohol, illicit alcohol, which they made in there.
Right. That's big business too.
Pura, which is pure, like 45% pure alcohol, like moonshine, Pusheen.
Yeah.
So on each wing, you'd have a boss of each of these things, and then an ultimate boss, and then the three brothers.
Yeah.
So pyramid.
Really organized.
Really organized.
That's unbelievable.
And they put 10 cents on every bottle of Coca-Cola or soft drink that came into the prison.
Yep.
They would charge each shop a certain amount, a license fee to operate.
Yeah.
And if they found anybody else selling drugs, because they packaged it in their own packaging, color coded, all the rest of it. If they found somebody dealing drugs that shouldn't have been, like that smuggled their own drugs in, they'd probably end up dead. They would kill them.
So they were a proper government.
Oh yeah. They were the law in there,
right?
And they had all of the guards paid off, the director of the prison, and if anybody, like the guards or the director, went against them or tried to break them up, they would assassinate them.
So they had no problem killing guards.
Oh no, they would kill guards as soon as they came out the front gate of the prison. I mean, a lot of them had grown up in the same barriers, the same district as these guards. So they knew where they lived. They knew where their families were. So they'd either kill them at home or they'd wait until they came out the front door of the prison. They'd have a motorcycle or a car out there and they'd just gun them down.
Right.
They killed 3 directors of the prison whilst I was there. And then this other gang came in, the Los Choneros, who are now one of
the most powerful. Yeah.
They were on my wing.
Wow.
They came into my wing. I became really friendly with Jose Luis Zambrano, who was nicknamed Rasquina.
So what about the getting back to foreigners and the extortion?
Yeah, so they'd have that little auction between the bosses of all of the wings, and whoever bid the most would get the prisoner and the opportunity to extort them. So they would take them back to whichever wing had paid the most for them, to the guard. They would then extort the hell out of them. They'd get you in a cell. They'd put a gun to your head. They'd electrocute you. They'd drown you in buckets of water. And in this prison, you were open 24/7, the cells, all night, all day, all night, because they were paying the guards. It was like that.
So the bars never closed.
You'd lock yourself. You'd lock yourself in your cell.
Right.
You didn't get locked in.
Right.
When you'd had enough, you'd lock your door. You'd make sure it was well locked. Trust me.
Right.
You'd get locked on the wing at about 5 p.m. They'd do roll call. They'd check everyone was there, and if people disappeared, they'd just take you off the list.
No big deal.
But yeah, people just disappeared in there. Honestly, I saw people get killed in there, hacked to death, blown up by hand grenades, shot, poisoned, electrocuted, drowned.
Yeah.
Every which way you can think of. And they would then burn the bodies, bury them, put them down the drains, just
cut people up.
Cut them up, dismember them, put them in the rubbish.
So if you were a foreigner that didn't have connections like you or didn't have money to pay, how would they extort you?
I'll give you an example. A Russian guy came in who I became really good. Right, he was actually Ukrainian, Ruslan Shevchenko. Hi, Ruslan. If you're not dead or back in Ukraine, find the Russians.
Yeah, dead.
Fighting the good fight.
Yeah.
Because he was ex-military. He was a field doctor. Real good guy. And but he was part of the Russian mafia as well. And he came in. He was in the first time for 400 kilos. And the first time he came in, I think they extorted him for, I don't know, about 15 grand. Second time he came in was for 42 tons.
Wow. So he's doing 25.
Oh, no, 42 tons. Sorry, it was more than that. Yeah. Wow. He got okay, 25.
So he's basically doing life.
Well, no, I think he bribed a few people and they got it down to 16. But him and his boss, because his boss had come over, they literally got 5 containers full of cocaine in molasses. So it was in liquid form.
Yeah.
Again, they were onto the impregnation liquid.
Yeah,
because they knew it was.
But how would a guy like, just say a mule, right? Like Oscar, somebody who didn't have a lot of money. How would the gangs use them?
I tried to educate. I tried to stop the gangs doing this because I tried to educate them on this. I said, look, all these Romanians that are turning up in there, Bulgarians, they're coming from countries that are really poor, that don't have any money.
Yeah,
they're doing this because their families at home have no money.
Right.
They don't have any money that you can extort from them because they're, not every country in Europe has loads of money.
Right.
I'm from Britain, yes, a wealthy country. Brits do, yeah. Some better countries in France, Germany, yes, maybe. But generally, drug mules, bearing in mind, I wasn't a drug mule,
right,
don't have money. That's why they're doing it, and they just couldn't get it. They didn't care. So I remember one particular guy from Spain. Oh no, Romania. He was Romanian, and his screams would wake me up. They were torturing him 24 hours a day for about 2 weeks. And there was one, I remember one guy ended up dead because they used to call it a submarino, drowning you. They would drown you, bring you up, electrocute you, drown you a bit more, electrocute you. And they obviously went too far. And then they just string you up and say to the guard that he died.
He killed himself.
Paint him off.
Wow.
And that'd be it. They'd just take him out. They'd take him off.
So would it be an ongoing extortion? Or if you could get your family to wire in money, would they leave you alone?
It depended on who was running the wing at the time.
Yeah.
Some bosses would be okay. Others would be assholes.
Could you do favors? Could you say, hey, I don't have any money, but like I'll put in some work?
Yeah, sometimes they would get people to do things like that. Yeah.
So you were very lucky.
Yeah, I was lucky.
They didn't take anything off of you.
Yeah, basically, I bought a cell.
Yeah.
Off them. In Quito, you could resell your cell.
Right.
In Guayaquil, they would just take it back off you at the end. Or if they didn't like you, they'd just take it off you anyway and then resell it. So to keep them happy and, to grease the wheels a bit.
You spent a little money with them.
I spent $1,000, $1.5 and a half, bought a cell.
Yeah.
Every week on a Sunday was like the day of all the shops would come around and collect any debts, or the drug dealers would come around and collect any debts. So Sunday was debt collection day and tribute day. So every person on the wing would have to pay $5 or $10 to the boss.
Okay.
Who would then pay a certain amount to
the boss of the triangle, the brothers.
Exactly. So
you kick in a little bit on tribute day.
So they were making mega money. You imagine as well all the cocaine they were selling. I think me and a guy sat down one day and we tried to work out roughly because I ended up involved with the cocaine. I was selling it for the choneros on our wing for a while.
Yeah.
And we sat down and kind of tried to work it out. I can't remember how much it came to, but it was like $1 million a week or something. $1
million.
Yeah, something like that. It was. You imagine
just selling coke in prison?
No, like everything.
Yeah.
With the bottles of coke. Because on a visit day, they could have each prisoner could have as many people come in as you wanted.
Right.
So you'd have like 30 people coming in to see one prisoner.
Yeah.
The prison was absolutely packed at the weekend.
Right.
And all the bosses had massive restaurants with like 100 tables and they'd be absolutely heaving.
And cash is just going through.
You imagine 10 cents on the bottle of on each bottle of Coca-Cola, how many bottles of Coca-Cola and Fanta got sold at the weekend.
Right. Plus food.
Yeah,
plus all the drugs in the week,
and drugs and all the alcohol, and
I
mean, you're talking just you start working it out,
right?
All the kilos of cocaine that they were selling in there.
I asked Oscar why do these bosses, they're so rich, why are they still in prison? And he was like, well, actually, they're safer in there.
Yeah.
In many ways, they make more money in there because it's easier. You can control a prison a lot easier than a whole city.
That's exactly right. They were happier in there because they had their gang in there. They had more protection in there. They had people wandering around with, they would move with 50 or 60 bodyguards around them, all with 9mm.
Yeah.
A couple of guys carrying machine guns in rucksacks, hand grenades. I saw a kilo of C4 in there with debts, electronic debts. And I sat down with them one day and they had all these weapons out and a kilo of C4. And I looked at them and I said, guys, why the f*** are we still sat here? Why don't we blow the wall?
Right.
Lay down a bit of covering fire against the police and get the f*** out of it.
Yeah.
A few months later, they did that out of they built a maximum security prison called the Rocker, named after Alcatraz. And they put some of the choneros in there, and 16 of the choneros managed to escape out of that. And they did exactly that. They blew the external wall, kidnapped some of the guards, and they had speedboats waiting on the river Dowell, I think it was called. And they went down there because a lot of them were fishermen or came from fishing backgrounds on the coast. And they all went to different countries all around South America, but they tracked them all down.
Wow.
Got them all back.
Yeah. So can you explain a little bit about your involvement in the coke traffic in there?
Yeah, well,
with the
when the Choneros came in, they kind of took over the wing that I was on, and that
was that violent?
No, but it turned violent, and that's when there was that gunfight that I was in the middle of, because obviously the Cubanos didn't like the fact that this third really powerful. At that time, they weren't so powerful; they were just up and coming. And the Cubanos didn't like the fact that they were starting to take the prison over.
Yeah.
And they were trying to form a partnership and do it nicely. And they were sort of, I'd call them a better class of criminal. They were sort of more educated.
The Cubanos.
No. The Choneros.
Oh, interesting.
You could talk to them more. They seemed.
You think you could reason with them?
Yeah, they were much more. They were stone cold killers.
Right.
I mean, Raskino Hotelli, when he first came in, he was only like 26. He killed 86 people himself, because his brother, Carlos, lived in the cell in front of me, supported Chelsea. I supported Chelsea Football Club. And we used to spend so much time together, and I'm still in contact with him now. And so I became really good friends with him. And, and
so what do you mean they're better classes of criminals? What are you talking about?
Because the Cubanos were kind of like street level thugs.
Yeah.
Robbing people, they were robbers, they were thieves, they were scallywags.
Sure.
Whereas the Choneros were more organized, they were better. You could just tell they were better educated, from better, slightly higher class, more educated. You could just talk to them. They were more like me than the other people.
Yeah.
And I got on with them.
So did the Cubanos have a problem with you now going with the Choneros?
Exactly. So, they kind of did. So as time went on and the tension built up, the Cubanos sent in a hit squad to take out Hotelli, Jose Luis, or Rasquina as they called him, and a couple of kill as many as they could. And I was living in this cell on my own because I paid them to make sure, because I liked to sell to myself.
Yeah. And
I had a German friend come in that evening. It was about 9 o'clock, and I was cooking spaghetti bolognese. And oddly enough, this German guy was called Pieter as well. So we were both sat there having a drink, doing a bit of coke, and having a chat and whatnot. And I had my door open, but normally everybody's doors would be open. There'd be music playing, everybody would be getting high, and there was like a party atmosphere always in the evening. Loads of people milling around. And this evening there was hardly anybody around. Everybody's doors were shut. And there were these like little groups of people huddled, talking, having these whispered conversations. And I was like, what the f*** is going on? And being like, sort of a bit oblivious to what was happening. Because obviously, me being with the Choneros, we didn't realize there was a assassination attempt about to happen.
Yeah.
But I was starting to read the signals and see the signs. And I said to the German, something's going on, because like it's really quiet tonight, and there's all these little weird conversations going on. And literally, our door was about one of the only open doors on the entire wing. And there was a group of the Cubanos in the entranceway to the wing in hammocks, about 10 of them, and all these other little groups dotted about the wing. And I'd gone down. I know one of the Cubano Choneros had come up to me. Gato, his nickname was. He was kind of like Hotelli's right-hand man, lived in the cell next door to him. And he'd come up to my cell and he said, "Oh, can I have some of the food you're cooking? Because it smells nice." And, they kind of liked to taste the European food. So I said, "Sure, no problem. You know what I mean? I'll come and get your plate when it's ready." So when it was ready, I went down and got his plate, got the food. And they'd obviously been watching me. And I said hi to the lot, because I was friends with both sides. And I said hi to the guys in the gateway, and, they all knew me. And they called me Local Pete, because, because I wouldn't take any. Now I was, when people tried it with me, I would fight back. And, I had a knife and stuff. And,
Did you have a gun?
Not there.
Okay.
Because it was only the gangs that they kept it pretty tightly controlled.
Right.
All that sort of stuff. But, I wouldn't take any.
Right.
Unless it was from the gang, and then it was like, it was a bit touch and go.
Right, sure.
But anyway, so I've said hello and whatnot, and I get this plate of food, and they'd obviously been watching my movement, and they saw it as an opportunity to get at this guy. So as I come back down with the plate of food and I knock on his door, one of them's come up behind me, and as the guy opened the door and I've handed him the plate of food, like I hand the plate of food to you, this guy is shot from behind me, over my shoulder, past my head, shot the guy straight in the face, blew the back of his head out. Shot him twice in the head. There and like there, and just the back of his head came out. Spaghetti's gone everywhere, as well as the back of his head. And I'm just like, what the fuck? And I didn't even look. I didn't even turn around to look what was going on. I just ran straight for myself.
Yeah.
Shut the door. The Germans opened the door, because quite often people would just get killed and that'd be it. They get assassinated. But this was a wholesale gunfight at the OK Corral.
Wow.
And I said, what the fuck are you doing? Get back in here. And because the door was only wood. So I dragged him back in the house, shut the door, and all hell broke loose out there. Jose Luis came out, and another guy, what was his name? Matraya. I think it was Matraya. I don't know.
Okay.
I can't remember his name anyway.
Yeah.
But so the two of them came out, and two of them fought a gunfight against about 12 or 14 of the Cubanos.
Wow.
Up and down the wing. And they managed to get hold, the two troneros, Jose Luis Zambrano and the other guy, managed to get hold of the head of this assassination group. The boss that was now installed on the wing. The guy called they called it Negro Polia, this big black guy, who I was friendly with as well. And when you can sort of see death in people's eyes.
Yeah.
A couple of days before, I'd been talking to him, and I saw death in his eyes, and I think he knew he was going to die. I don't know how.
Wow.
That instinct that people have.
Yeah.
And I just saw it in his eyes. A real weird look. And
so now they're shooting up and down the tier, like this in the cell block. They're shooting back and forth.
In the cell block. Yeah.
So bullets, if you're in your cell, bullets are whizzing past your cell door.
They were hitting my door.
Wow.
Things were hitting my door.
Were you on the deck?
Got cramp again. They were hitting things were hitting my door, and I was worried about bullets coming through the door.
Yeah.
And there was like a low partition wall between like the living area of the cell and the kitchen and the shower area at the back. But the windows were all open. There was no glass. It was just bars because it was hot there. And I said to the German, I said, get behind that wall. And we both got down behind the wall. And I said, keep an eye on the window in case, because I was so in with the choneros. I thought, no, I think somebody might even try and kill me. Do you know what I mean? Because they were trying to kill all of them.
Right.
And things were hitting my door.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, no, man. I mean, this is it. And I said, keep an eye on the window. Make sure if you see any movement outside in the yard, because the guards would get paid off to let people. I'd heard of people getting killed. The guards would let people out at night to come
shoot through the bars.
Window.
Yeah, shoot through the window into the cell. Right.
And sometimes that's how people would get killed. So I said, keep an eye on the window. I'll keep an eye on the door. And it went on for 2 hours, 2.5 hours. 2.5 hours it was, the gunfight. It started at about 9:30.
Wow. How many people got killed?
2 or 3.
Okay.
3, I think it was.
And then they got a hold of this black guy for the Cubanos.
So that's what I was saying. So they got a hold of the black guy, and they were saying, oh, we got a hold of your boss. We're going to kill him. And they shot him twice in the stomach, and he was begging for his life. He's going, no, please don't kill me. I've got family. I've got kids. And they were shouting to the other Cubanos. They were going, we're going to kill this for about half an hour. And then there was a couple of bangs, and they shot him in the head, just killed him. And obviously a few others ended.
So that hit wasn't successful. The hit squad, they couldn't take him out.
So after 2.5 hours, Jose Luis and the other guy went back in their cells and locked the doors because it all started to calm down a bit. And what the police would do is they'd wait for it to calm down. They wouldn't come in whilst the gunfight was going on. They'd wait for the ammunition to run out or for it to calm down. And it ended up with just one of the Cubanos, because obviously that boss, that black guy, had been killed. So this other guy sort of instilled himself straight away, wandered up and down the wing, just firing a revolver over and over again. And I heard him a couple of times outside my cell, open up the revolver and the shells hit the floor. And then load again, going, you choneros, you all a bunch of come out and fight me. I'm out here on my own. You know, bang, 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 bang. And I mean, in an enclosed space,
deafening.
It's loud. And
there's gunpowder smoke, gun smoke all around it.
I know for a fact that Jose Luis came out with because he had a chrome 45 and a 9mm. So there was a 45 and a 9mm going off, and the other guy came out with an Uzi. I heard it go off. You know that. And hand grenades going off. It was.
It's war.
It was war. It was war on the wing.
So then, what became of that? Was there a truce afterwards, or?
Well, as I said, it died down after about 2.5 hours, and then we heard the police start to encircle the wing, and that was almost worse because they got us all out of the cell, started torturing everybody until they found out. They went around and found anybody with any gunshot wounds or any wounds, got all those. They got the bosses, started discharging guns up against their heads, drowning them to find out who had done what.
Right.
I mean, they were pissed.
Did they kill anyone?
No, they didn't kill anyone, but they came close.
Right. But I bet they got to think twice before they kill somebody.
There was one occasion where they did kill a boss, the police. They came in and at the weekends, obviously, there were families living in the prison there when I first got there. And, you know, every other weekend you could have your girlfriend to come in and stay overnight and stuff like this. And one weekend in front of this guy's family, and the wife and the kid, they dragged this guy out of his cell, took him out in the exercise yard and said, "We've had enough of your..." And his wife screaming and shouting, saying, "Please don't kill him." And they just executed him in front of her,
my God.
in the yard, and then just dragged him out.
Anarchy. Absolute.
That was the police.
I know. Absolute
just
lawlessness.
Oh yeah, totally.
Wow. Okay.
So they split up. They've tortured everybody for about another 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
They dragged the body.
What did they do to you?
They just went along hitting everybody.
Right.
Like
they could see you weren't involved though.
Well, no, yeah. They've got us all lying down on the floor, hands over our heads. You know, for about 2.5 hours they went on, and they actually, after beating us all, they herded about 130 of us into the space of a prison cell, which was like there was an exit out into the exercise yard, which was the width of a prison cell. And that's where they killed this black guy. And about half of it was full of his blood because he's quite a big guy and he bled out for half an hour and then afterwards. And the smell, you know, a lot of blood, that's iron smell. That's the smells. It's the smells I'll never forget of people getting cut up and like their entrails and just the smells. It's just bad. And they herded this, and there was about 130 of us on the wing at that time, into the space of a cell, like, I don't know, 6 feet wide by 10 feet long. 130
of you.
130 of us packed into it where this guy had been killed as a lesson. And I remember my trainers got soaked in blood to about that deep and ruined the trainers. Obviously, I threw them away afterwards.
Poor guy.
And then they cat and nine tail whipped us. And as we came back out, they got us all back out. And as each one came out, they cat and nine tail whipped us out into another area of the wing. And then they sat us all down. They said, if this happens again, it won't go down as well. We will come in and start shooting because they had before. There'd been gunfights between the police and the inmates. I mean, it was, So they took out the choneros out of the wing. And that's when things got really bad for me. You know?
Why? Because the Cubanos are mad at you.
Yeah, because all the Cubanos then took over again. And they put in 3 bosses now. jointly in that wing because there'd been so much trouble.
Right.
And they went round every single cell, and anybody that had anything to do with the Choneros, I could hear them going round the cell, knock, knock, around the wing, sorry, going knock, 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 well, knock, 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 bang, bang, bang. People opening up, people screaming because they'd locked the wing down, the gang. People, so they could do this. People screaming, people getting beaten, and then they were just taking the cells off them, everything off them, throwing them out the wing. And because the prison authorities gave the Choneros a wing of their own to try and prevent this happening. So then they send these people down to that wing. So as they were going around the wing, I could hear them getting closer and closer to my door. And I was thinking, they're going to come to me. I know it for sure because I'd been working, because I was so friendly with the Choneros. Right. And they were getting closer and closer. And there was a tap, tap, tap at the door. And I thought, that doesn't sound like the Choneros. And there was this woman called Mercedes. Hi, Mercedes.
She's not watching this. Anyways,
she might be. But anyway, she's Ecuadorian, worked with the church. And she was like an angel. She would come in, bring in shopping for me and just help out foreigners, basically. And it was her. She could, because she had clearance to come in any day. And she's seen it on the news. And she just by luck happened to get in time before they reached my cell. And she came in and they had so much respect for her, even this lot, because she helped them as well.
Right.
That when they got to my cell and there was a bang, bang, bang at the door, I opened the door and there's about 30 of them out there ready to come for me.
Yeah.
Guns out, everything. And as soon as they saw it, they put the guns behind their backs and they looked in and one of them said to the others, "Oh, we'll come back to him," and you know, and they cleared off. And I
do you think they would have killed you, or would have just taken?
Well, later on, after she'd gone, I don't think it was that day, but it was like a couple of days after or something. The worst of the three of them got me in his cell. And I walked in the cell and there was a big guy called Armando who I got on quite well with. And I didn't see him, but he was behind the door. And as I walked in, the door shut behind me and he was stood behind me and he was massive. And he was like the guy that they get and he would choke you out. And he's behind me and I'm thinking, this isn't good. And the boss is there and he's drinking and he's sniffing coke and I can see he's high. And that's the worst kind of time you want to be trying to negotiate with someone. And he says, I can't remember exactly what he said, but he said, it came to the point where he said, "Oh, we're going to kill you." And I sort of thought, me being me, not taking any. I said, "Well, go on then, try it." And he said, and he turned to Armando and he said, "Go and get 3 guys, come back and we're going to cut this guy up." And he said, it's so cold and deadpan. I thought, he actually means this. And Armando went out, locked the door behind him. And I thought, he's gone to actually get some guys to do this. And I thought, and now I've really put myself in it. And I said, "Look, guy," I said, you know, like, chill out. You know, I was only joking. And I think I ended up paying about $1,000, $1,000, or something like that anyway, to, you know, placate him.
Do you think that was the closest you came to death?
That was pretty, well,
like out of everything that has happened up to this point?
That was pretty close. I mean, I ended in Quito. Oh no, that was in Guayaquil. There was another gunfight on another wing. After that, I ended up moving upstairs because there was another wing above that one, but they were all single stories. It was a 2-story building, but the wings were 1 story. So the wing above it, they ended up sort of making a wing for foreigners, and because they were giving me so much downstairs, it was becoming unbearable. So secretly, I moved my stuff upstairs gradually. And then suddenly paid the hefty the gear. I paid him off myself. And I'd done a deal with the boss upstairs and moved myself upstairs. They were pissed off about it because they were, you know, they didn't want.
How were you accessing money? Were you still having people wire you stuff in?
Yeah, I was getting money wired over.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was, at least you had something socked away for emergencies.
My money, my personal money, the money that I'd built up lasted me 6 years. And you can imagine I'd spent 120 odd grand on lawyers and whatnot.
Right.
And bought 5 cells in Quito and spending quite a lot of money.
Right. But that kept you alive.
Yeah. Wow. So it kept me alive.
So now at this time, how far into your stretch are you? at this point where you fall out with the Cubanos and you move upstairs?
God. So I was in Quito 2 years. That was probably in about another 2 years. So about 4 years.
4 years, and you're off of a 12.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I move upstairs. It's a lot calmer. Well, I say that's a lot calmer. Basically, the prison started a policy of trying to disband all the gangs. Mm-hmm. And what they were doing was they started taking out all the bosses of the gangs, like the boss of each wing. Mm-hmm. They would try and take them out, and they would send them off to another prison into the jungle or wherever they could.
Yeah.
And the effect that had was actually to destabilize the whole situation.
So it got even worse.
Because it got worse because there was no law, because the gang was the law and kept order and stability. Mm-hmm. And so it became completely lawless and anarchy. People started bringing in their own drugs. People started murdering whoever they wanted, whenever they wanted. Yeah. And it became absolutely lawless. And that was when they shut it down eventually.
Okay.
The Correa got sworn in.
The president of Ecuador.
Yeah. And he built a whole new prison estate. The prisons that you now see on TV.
La Roca, specifically.
Well, no, La Roca was
already in existence.
That was already in existence. But like the new style ones that you'll see on the news.
Where it's like American style.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody, there's nobody has favors.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, look, there are always going to be favors, but you know what I mean? It's
reverted back to what it was before. It's all gang run. It's all, I mean, there's more weaponry in there than there was before.
Really?
Yeah.
Also, it didn't work.
You saw the mass. It worked initially.
Okay.
We all got transferred en masse. So I was upstairs for about another, I don't know, 2-3 years, something like that. In that time, my mum died, my auntie died, one of my best friends got killed, English guy called Steve, got hung because he owed the gang like 150 grand.
Back here?
No,
or in the prison.
There, in the prison.
In the prison.
Like 5 doors down from me.
Wow.
Yeah, they said you've got until this day because he was going to get released on parole. And he was begging the embassy to get him out of there. And they said it was a Monday. And they turned up, they hung him, they choked him out and they hung him. They strung him up on a hook up in the middle of his cell. And they said it was a suicide. It wasn't. All this.
How did he run up that debt?
He did have 25 years. He'd got it down to 16, and then he was getting out after he'd done 9 years.
Was he using?
No.
How did he run up the debt?
He'd run out of money. He'd run out of funds. So
see.
He was desperate to get out of there.
So he owed just extortion payments.
No. He did business with them.
Oh.
I said, Steve, do not do business with the gang because whatever happens, you're going to end up paying. They can say they've sent it and they won't have sent it. Or if it gets seized by the police, wherever, you're still going to end up paying. You will pay. Whatever happens, you're going to end up getting. And sure enough, that's what happened. But he was so desperate to get out of there. Wow. I think he lost his head to some extent.
Yeah, well, certainly lost his neck. Listen,
he did. Yeah,
sorry, Steve.
Yeah.
Okay, so you never did business that deep with them.
Not with the gang, no.
Yeah, you just did business on your own and kicked up.
Well, no, with the choneros I did, but not with the Cubanos, and not to that.
Right.
I mean, I'm talking exportation business.
Oh wow.
Yeah. That's why the debt was serious.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can't. There's so many things you can't control.
Exactly.
Especially as a foreigner.
I was like, yeah, totally. I was like, what the.
I think there's something about Brits. You guys are the ones that go. There's something crazy about you. You guys go skydiving. You swim cageless with great white sharks.
Pete out there.
Yeah. You guys do all this wild shit that Americans don't do. Like we're supposed to be the stupid ones, but you guys are crazy and stupid. Like you're. It's like
how do you want to get out?
How dumb are you?
Get out of the country.
Yeah. Like
who you want to get into the airport?
and I think that's because like. I don't know. We grow up in a system.
In our blood.
It is. There's something about being on this rock that makes you guys want to take these crazy adventures. I think it's because Americans are very close to death and law and order as well.
Yeah.
Like an American, even an American criminal, if he was in prison in Ecuador, he would be like, Okay.
There were a few Americans in there.
Right, but not as many as like Europeans or Brits.
No.
I would assume.
No.
And like even
I never saw any Australians.
Never any Australians. Never. Interesting. But they do a lot of that crazy shit too, especially because the price of Coke is so high out there. But I think like Oscar was like, I'm just trying to make it home. Like there's no way I'm going to get away with anything. You know what I mean? And he almost got killed still, right? So, but you had the wherewithal to at least not like, you were just moving Coke and paying a tax to the bosses.
I've always said this. I think the way that I survived in there more than anything was that I can talk to anyone from, I actually met Rafael Correa twice, once in Quito and once in Guayaquil, through the bars, because he came into the prison to try and get the prisoner vote. And I actually spoke to him and I was like, what are you going to do for the foreigners like us? And he was like, oh, we're going to, do the indulto and all that.
Yeah.
And blah, but obviously it didn't help me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And actually, whilst I was in Quito, the ex-president, I've forgotten his name now, the one that came back, he'd robbed loads of money. He ended up in prison with us for 6 months. And whilst he was in there, typical politician, he was going, oh yeah, when I get out, I'm going to run for presidency again and I'll reduce everybody's sentences.
Yeah.
When he got out, what did he do? He said, I'm going to up the sentences for everybody. I'm going to get this death sentence introduced here.
Bastard. Crooked politician.
I'm trying to remember his name now.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, he's
It's absurd. The world in South America is upside down.
Honestly, there were guards in the prison who had been arrested for bringing drugs and firearms into the prison, who would do their time, get out and become guards again.
They would hire them. They would hire them.
Yeah. That's
insane. Why I don't want to hear anything about how South America is so up because of the gringos. It's your culture, guys. You got to figure something out, okay? And to their credit, like I don't know if it's credit or not, they see what El Salvador is doing with like this zero tolerance torture, basically. But it's like this.
Well, the Philippines kind of started that one, didn't they?
Yeah,
Duarte or whatever his name was.
Duterte, but he's doing extrajudicial killings, like Ecuador, in terms of like the supermax prisons. El Salvador, and I think
what are they doing there?
Well, you're in there. I mean, just Google what those supermax shaved heads, no clothing. You do your time in boxers.
I mean, you could have done that in Guayaquil. Most of us used to wander around in shorts anyway.
Right.
Guayaquil was so hot. So.
But they don't. They make nobody gets their own cells. They put in a cell built for 4 men. They put in hundreds, and it's literally like totalitarianism, right?
Well, that's what they tried in Ecuador when they built that new prison estate, and initially it was working. There were no drugs in there. There were no firearms in there.
Right.
But as time went by and the guards, the corruption there is endemic from top to bottom. Even Rafael Correa got sentenced to 8 years in absentia for corruption.
Crazy. Yeah.
And I mean, I could tell he was corrupt when I met him. I mean, he kicked out the DEA. That was the first thing he did from the base in Manta. I mean, what do you think? He was involved with the gangs in the prison and with the choneros. He was heavily involved in whatever. I won't say it will, but you get the idea.
And so all that corruption, eventually, all those rules went out the wayside.
Yeah. So as soon as the guards and the police established what they could get away with, then they started breaking. They gave it a few months to establish what they could do. And then the flow of drugs started, and then the weapons, but people quite quickly started taking out the reflectors out of the lights, shaping them into machetes and big knives, and people started getting killed very quickly. I mean, in the first week we were in there was like over 30 murders, because they made the mistake. As people were arriving in the new prison, everyone was just getting stripped down, nothing, shorts, t-shirt, and a bag of toiletries. You couldn't bring any of the stuff from the previous prison. And that really did my head in, because I lost all the letters from my mum who had died. And that was all, I didn't give a shit about all the TVs, all the material shit, nothing. All I wanted was those letters, and I couldn't even take them. That's what really pissed me off about that.
I think also the reason that El Salvador, it hasn't unraveled their supermax system is because there's no drug money going through there. Ecuador is such a hub for drug trafficking that all of that feeds the prison and the inmates and stuff like that.
I mean, exactly. That's why when I was in there, I met some of the Sinaloa cartel, and that was the start of all of that. the Albanian, one of the biggest Albanian drug traffickers landed whilst I was still in prison there. I can't remember his name now, but he's still in there.
Okay, so how did you get out? How did you come home?
Yeah. So my family basically, my family had enough. My dad was getting older. My mum had already died. My auntie died. My cousin died whilst I was in there. Like literally half my family died. Yeah. Loads of friends.
Did you know what had happened to your ex-girlfriend? You never heard from her, obviously.
Well, I knew that she'd been sentenced and stuff like that, but I didn't speak to her again.
And that affected you? All this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and seeing all the killing and nearly getting killed myself and all the rest of it, and obviously, I ended up with complex PTSD because I literally living in a war zone. I didn't know every day whether that was going to be my last day. That was one of the worst things there, is that you just did not know whether you were going to survive that day. It could have happened at any second. Violence came out of nowhere sometimes. Hand grenades would come through the window sometimes and explode just to try and get somebody else. But you could get caught. A friend of mine got caught up and had his ankle blown off. They reattached it. Yeah. But like, you get the
He's not running marathons anymore.
No.
Right.
So, it was just so dangerous.
Had you developed like a really bad coke problem, I would have been all over that.
No.
Wow. So
I've never.
You dodged the addiction part of it. How did you psychologically, what took your mind out of it?
I've read a lot. I built up a massive DVD collection. So we'd program our own TV schedule. Yeah. In the second prison. I mean, in the end prison, there were no TVs. It was similar to the places you're describing in El Salvador.
So then what happened? What were the key elements to get you out?
They'd had enough of it, and I didn't really want to come back to Britain because, again, that was another bad thing. All the way through, I didn't know what was going to happen when I got back to Britain. Yeah. Because they hadn't said, you've done enough time, or the case is closed in Britain. It was never, even to this day, they've never ever said, because I was only charged for 7 kilos there, whereas the case in Britain was for 80. Conspiracy to import at least 80 kilos and £4 million. Yeah. And at no point did they ever say, oh yeah, okay, you've done your time, sufficient, case closed. Yeah. So in theory, you haven't heard from them since. No, in theory, the case was still open. So even my family had me repatriated eventually. I did 9 years and about 3 months in total in Ecuador. Right. And like I said, it got so bad, and there was so many people getting killed and all the rest of it. And I got TB. Yeah. That nearly killed me. I was really sick.
Tuberculosis.
Yeah. I got injected with it. It was supposedly a vaccine, but they were trialing drugs on the inmates.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So my family we'd started the repatriation process. It takes It took about 2 years.
You have to go through the embassy and
it goes back and forth between Britain and the Ecuadorian government. Loads of paperwork back and forth. Anyway, eventually they signed it. A couple of prison officers came out from England, from good old England, London, to Ecuador. They got a lesson, I tell you. Yeah. When I got taken to the airport, there were 4 Interpol officers in the car with me, all heavily armed. A Jeep behind, a Jeep in front, like military style, with machine guns, M16s and handguns, just to take me to the airport. They shut down half the airport. It was like being El Chapo.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Right.
I was like, and in the car, they were laughing on the way to the airport, and they were going, "Do you not like it?" And I said, "Well, it's all right, but I'd rather be at home." And they said, "Yeah, we know, because you tried to escape." And that was the only point at which I finally found out that was definitely the reason that I'd been transferred to Guayaquil. Right. Because I'd never really been 100% sure whether it was, them trying to extort me or what was going on.
Yeah. And Oscar said that. He said if you tried to escape from the Quito prison, Jose Moreno, and you got caught, they would send you to the worst prison in Guayaquil. Yeah. Was it good to talk to your countrymen, even though you were in shackles? Was it good to talk to some English cats?
I mean, like I said, there were a couple of English guys on the wing in Guayaquil, but I mean, like I said, one of them ended up dead, and then 2 years later, Ronnie, a Scottish guy, ended up dead in similar fashion because the embassy wouldn't believe. I kept telling the embassy that they killed him.
Right.
And the embassy were like, no, it was a suicide. It was a suicide. I was like, shut up.
Yeah.
The chairs were all at the side of the cells. The knot, there was no drop in the knot. His head was touching the ceiling.
Right.
When we took him down. Even the guards were saying he's been killed.
Yeah.
And the embassy were like, no, suicide.
Your embassy?
Yeah.
Denied it.
Yeah.
Wow.
I had to tell his daughters when I got out, I'm really sorry, but he was killed, and explained to them what had actually happened.
Right.
And they were thankful for that because,
Were you worried because at the beginning of your stretch, the Brits told you if you do any less than 10 years, we're going to recharge you?
No, it was if I served any less than 6 or if I was sentenced to less than 10.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So you already,
I'd done
your
9
time.
years, 3. I was on course to do 11 years out the 12 was what I was going to do because they weren't going to give me any remission there.
Right.
So that's what I was going to do. I later found out.
Okay. So you served a lot of time. They must have thought, well, this guy's done his time.
Yeah. So I ended up in Britain, back in Wandsworth prison, which is in London.
Yeah.
I did 10 months there. So I ended up doing 10 months and 10 days in total. And I was actually going to call my book 10 years and 10 days on the line, i.e. the equatorial line, the cocaine line. I was going to have a picture of the globe and a line of cocaine running around the equatorial line. Yeah. And then, in the prisons, in that last prison, you have the lines like in American prisons that you follow to get from A to B. Yeah. So, but the publishing company thought that was too intelligent and people wouldn't get it.
Right. It probably is. What did they tell you when you got sent to Wadsworth? How much time were you supposed to do? Like, why? I thought you were going free. Like, what was the purpose of holding you?
So I had to finish off like the, I can't remember how they calculated it, but I did 10 years, 10 months. Okay. And even up until the day I got released out of Wandsworth, I didn't know whether I was going to get what they call gate arrested, right? Where the police are waiting for you at the gate and they rearrest you and say, we're going to take you and now charge you for 80 kilos.
Right. Now you got the conspiracy charge to face.
And, honestly, and on my day of release in Britain, you should be out by midday. I didn't get released till 6 p.m. So every hour I'm knocking on the office of the wing office of the prison to ask the boss of the wing, the prison officer. Yeah. Are you sure there's not any warrants for me? There's no police waiting for me? And he kept going, calm down, there's nothing. And I just couldn't believe him. I was thinking, there's got to be something wrong. And I said, well, why haven't I been released? And he said, I don't know. Got to 6 p.m. and they kicked me out the door with 30 quid or whatever. It's like, on you go, jolly boy.
Wow. Wow. Good chap.
See you later, old chap.
Good job.
Off for a cup of tea.
Wow. Wow.
I was like, you wankers.
Did the family show up to pick you up? Did your dad pick you up?
No. Oddly enough, when I left France, my dad took me to the train station for that fateful last trip. And he said goodbye to me. And he knew I wasn't coming back for something. And he said, there was something he knew. And I got on the train to go to Paris from our local train station in France. Went up to Paris, did loads of crazy Paris, changing money on the Champs-Elysees, loads of dodgy business. Flew out to Ecuador. Anyway, so I had a train journey there. And then at the end, I get released out of Wandsworth, and a Scottish girl that I'd met over in Ecuador, who was a professor of criminology, met me. And honestly, I had a culture shock in Wandsworth. When I got back to Wandsworth, I was the only happy prisoner in the whole of Wandsworth prison. There were people wandering around the exercise yard nearly crying. One guy was crying, going, it's so bad in here, it's terrible. I was going, this is great. There's a TV, there's running water. I know I'm not going to get shot. I'm going to be alive at the end of the day. I know when I'm getting out.
There's rules.
This is ace. I'm loving it. And there we go. People are looking at me going, you're mental. What the is wrong with you? But honestly, I thought coming back to my own culture because I'm British, I won't have culture shock. I did. Wow. Because, I mean, you imagine in 10 years, Facebook didn't exist when I went into prison. WhatsApp didn't even exist. None of that. All of that had come online. The internet had taken over the world. All the pubs in Britain had closed down. The whole culture had changed. Right. Not just a few buildings and roads had gone up and changed. The whole culture had changed here. everything.
Yeah, half of Africa and Europe live in Britain now. You know, like it's wild.
Yeah, well, not so much that in that way, but like
the development. London has sprung up like crazy.
I suppose I also got used to in Ecuador, if you had anything left on your plate, like food, you'd offer it to somebody because there was so much poverty.
Right.
And here there was so much waste. So much wastage, like of food getting thrown away at the end, you know, when we got fed in the prison. There'll be half a bin of food getting thrown out. Yeah. I was like, and it was sometime not long before Christmas. So all the Christmas advertising was on TV. And it was just really overwhelming. And, you know, all the consumerism and packaging on everything. It was just, it just blew my mind. Wow. It took me a long time to get used to it. And also the seasons, because being on the equator.
Every day's the same.
Every day's the same. Just sun goes down, sun comes up, sun goes down. It's hot.
It's hot,
a little bit,
muggy all the time.
A little bit less hot. And then it's hot as again.
Yeah.
And here it was, and suddenly it's getting dark at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm like, what the f going on?
Yeah.
You know, you think I spent nearly a quarter of my life it was a third of my life in Ecuador. I was 29 when I got arrested and 39 when I came out.
Wow. You must have been so happy to be home.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I got a train from London back to Stroud, where I live in Gloucester, and my dad was waiting for me. So it was like one big journey.
That's right.
And then I had so read the book. Oh. There's a lot more in there. Trust me.
So you went back to where it all started.
Yeah.
So what year was that you got out?
2015.
Okay. And
2005 I got arrested.
Wow. And since then you paint houses you do, it's more than that. What do you explain what you do now?
I'm hand paint. Well, say like really expensive hand fitted kitchens. I go in and hand paint them at the end. It's really delicate work and very intricate. In fact, I've got to go back to the job tomorrow that I'm working on to finish it.
Wow. Wow. Is that pretty good business? Do you enjoy it?
Well, it's actually two old acquaintances, one good friend and one acquaintance who I knew from back in the day. One made a lot of money through an internet business and now is like an angel investor. Yeah. So put the money up for this kitchen company to be started. And
that's great.
Yeah, they're making good money. I make all right money.
Yeah, not like the old days, but
yeah, but I would like to start importing cacao from Ecuador because Ecuadorian cacao is some of the best in the world. And I did get some samples in, but you can imagine with me, there's a lot of barriers to importing stuff from Ecuador.
Especially that starts with a C.
C, exactly.
You scared me. You scared us, Pete. Do you feel like you could have done it without the drugs? You could have made all that money and taken care of your mom, and it would have taken longer.
If I'd have had I don't want to blame my upbringing, but
but there's a factor in that.
If I'd have had a different upbringing and if my parents hadn't got divorced when I was 10 and I hadn't been exposed to drug use, which I was all throughout my childhood. And
you were enabled by your father. Yeah.
Because I mean, when he found out the first time that I'd been arrested, he told me you should have done it better, not like
not that you shouldn't have done it at all.
Yeah. He said you shouldn't have got caught.
Move smarter. Right.
So that was like, okay, I'll try a bit harder next time.
Right.
So if I'd have grown up in a more stable home environment where my mum wasn't having mental episodes every time she drank, which was almost daily after school, and being exposed to all that, which was really difficult to deal with as a kid.
Yeah.
I'd have probably been a CEO of a large company that I'd started because honestly, I have so many business ideas I come up with. And me and a friend that I met in Cardiff are always bouncing business ideas off each other still. Yeah. And we've got so many ideas, but you imagine how hard it is for me to get financial backing to start one of these now,
Because of your background?
Yeah, background, credit record, all sorts of barriers. I mean, my criminal record runs to pages and pages, not just for drugs, for firearms, all sorts of
Yeah. Has there been temptation in these like 9 years since you've been home? Has there ever been a time when you said, okay, I'll make this one little move?
I always say that dealing drugs is more addictive than taking drugs.
Oh yeah.
That's a catchphrase that I've coined.
100%.
And a lot of people have come back to me after I've said that and said, that is so true. Like the lifestyle, even if you're not taking them, just the actual dealing of drugs is so addictive. The buzz you get, the adrenaline. I was addicted to dealing drugs. The adrenaline rush of beating the system, getting around the system, and just getting one over on the system, and just because I liked to play chess when I was a kid, and the strategy, and you can see the whole working out strategies of beating the system and getting drugs, and then that. Getting them in is such a rush.
Yeah, because you're beating.
And I'm not trying to encourage anyone to do it because it's you're going to end up either in prison, dead, or f***ed up. Some people succeed, but not many.
Most people don't.
Yeah, most people don't. So, but
yeah, that you had to. So, yeah, that's hard. How long did it take you? It took me about 10 years to let the game go when I got out.
Yeah, so I was going to say it is. It's like being an addict. There's always that temptation. I could pick up the phone today and bring up someone and quite easily get a hold of a ton of cocaine if I wanted. Yeah. In Ecuador. Really easily. Say I had the money and I wanted to do it. Yeah. I could have that there like that. But, I don't want to go back to prison. No. Quite frankly. And I know in England, if I ever did anything again,
game over.
It's a third strike, and I know I think the rules have changed slightly because they had those IPP sentences here, which were like indefinite public protection. Yeah, well, it's like the third strike rule in America, right? But I think they would kind of apply that to me here. Sure, 3 strikes, and they would throw
minimum 30 years, probably.
Definitely 30. Yeah. It would start at 30.
Your life would be over.
Yeah, it'd be finished, and it's just
Yeah, and I think you're smart enough and capable enough to where you're now
working it. Painting and decorating is hard work. I mean, I've had cramp twice during the and it's because I'm on my hands and knees quite a lot most of the day. My hands are still got paint on them. Yeah. And it's hard work, but at least I know at the end of the week I'm not going to prison.
Have you?
And the police aren't coming through the door.
Have you forgiven yourself? How did you recover from the complex PTSD? And have you forgiven yourself for what has happened to your family and your ex-girlfriend?
I don't think I'll ever forgive myself for what the hurt that I caused my ex-girlfriend and her daughter, because she suffered a lot as well, and my family a lot, hell of a lot. That'll never go away. The complex PTSD, I went for some therapy, and it made things worse. I'd go in there, and they tried all that REM. I don't know what it's called. I can't remember what it's called now. But they waved their finger at the time. They were waving their finger up and down in front of my face to replicate REM stage sleep. Whilst I talked about the most traumatic experiences in my life, and I've had so much death around me. By the time I was 20, I'd seen 8 people die in front of me. Wow. I mean, how many 20-year-olds have seen 8 people take their last breath in front of them? I mean, honestly, I've had my nickname became Grim Peter. Honestly, one of my friends in Cardiff called me. No, sorry, in Wales called me Grim Peter because it was like 2 or 3 people a month would be dying around me. Wow! And I'd just come across car accidents, heart attacks. Yeah, because I was out and about a lot. I've seen so much death, so much. Yeah, I would like to write a book about that. Really,
you should,
because I have, and it's not normal.
Maybe you try they do MDMA therapy. I don't know if they do that over here, if that's legal, but it's got to be something you could do. Ayahuasca.
Do you know what helped me more than anything was writing the book?
Yeah,
that was kind of cathartic because I had to relive it all, and I think doing these podcasts to some extent because I talk about it again and relive a lot of it. Yeah. And actually, we never talked about all those massacres that happened in Ecuador. I mean, that's a whole nother story.
Well, they can read about it if it's in the book.
No, it's not. I mean, a lot of that happened after I left. But, I was sent a photograph of somebody holding my friend's head. you know, the decapitated head. I mean, you know, there was like 300 people killed in one day.
Wow.
When the Choneros went
Right.
and all that, I was going to come on to that earlier. That was all the Sinaloa cartel and the new generation Jalisco cartel vying for control of Guayaquil, the port city of Guayaquil, where that prison is.
Yeah.
And it's all playing out like a mini war, like it is in Mexico, in Ecuador, between the gangs that are affiliated for the trafficking routes.
Move the coke for them.
Exactly. So it's all...
And you just dodged that. You got out a few years before all that went down.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, you know, they were in there when I was there, but it was
But the massacres, I mean, think about the close calls you had. There's a reason you stayed alive. Right?
Yeah, exactly. That's
You got to think about that. The destiny.
Sure.
You dodged death. You should have died 5 times over.
Oh yeah, way more than that.
Yeah. Well, tell them where you can get the book, man.
It's on Amazon. Just look it up on Amazon.
The name is
El Infierno, which is like
hell.
Yeah, this is what they call prison in Ecuador. El Infierno, the hot place.
El Infierno by Pieter
Tritton.
Pieter Tritton. El Infierno, Pieter Tritton.
I think it's one of the only books about Ecuadorian prison.
Well, that should be, I mean, it should be a movie and hopefully a Netflix or a TV show.
Because there's so many stories like, you know, the build up to it, like the early years. And
of course,
you know, honestly, I've got some mental stories.
Yeah, man. I mean, that was unbelievable. Go get the book. The link will be in the description. Pete, dude, we had a great afternoon.
Yes.
Yeah. I hope you had some fun.
Yeah.
I hope you've released some emotion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're a good dude.
Thanks.
You're a good. I really mean it, bro. You're solid, dude.
Thanks.
And I hope to hear from you soon. And I believe in you.
Thank you.
You know what I mean? I remain optimistic eternally. So, you know,
that's the key to life.
That's it, buddy. That's
Definitely.
it. All right, you guys. We appreciate you. We appreciate Pieter, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.